I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cavill.
Here.
Mr. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Here.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Lefevre.
Here. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education enter closed session to discuss minutes lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and probable or imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the public body. Can someone please move that?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre.
Aye. Okay, we have a suggested motion for the board to return to open session. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer. Aye. Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre.
Aye. Our,
Point of order, my mic is not working.
oh, sure. If we could have someone take a look. Do you mind if we continue while he's working on that? And but if you need to raise your hand or something. Okay, so our first item of business is recognitions. I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Small.
Thank you. Each year, the Illinois State Board of Education sponsors the Those Who Excel Awards to honor individuals who have made significant contributions to our public schools throughout the state. Tonight, each school's principal, as well as the program directors, join me as we proudly recognize District 211 individuals who have been honored for their professional contributions, leadership, and community service. Each Those Who Excel Award recipient will receive a crystal apple, similar to the one I have displayed here. When I call your name, please stand so that you can be recognized. Our first award winners are in the team category. Members of the Alternative Learning Academy, please stand when I call your name. Administrator, Dane Henning. Dane was named assistant principal at Conant High School this year, but last year was the lead administrator at Ayala. Counselor, Zolita Herrera Petluski. Social worker, Alexandria Fleece. Alex is unable to attend this evening. Mathematics teacher, Carly Sutherland. Science teacher, Joseph McNider. English teacher, Sean Keevan. Social studies teacher, Jordan Sandberg. Jordan is now teaching social studies at Schaumburg. Teaching assistant, Moises Enciso. The Alternative Learning Academy, also known as ALA, has been an integral part of District 211 since 2016 and was designed to provide a district-operated alternative education program for students in need of more thorough and comprehensive support. The ALA, located in the District 211 North Campus building, has been described as a parent as a team in touch with us and our needs. A fellow teacher noted that the ALA has executed their duties and demonstrated excellence by returning a significant number of students to their home schools and guiding others to a successful graduation. The ALA's team dedication and care for our students in need is a shining example of caring and compassion in education. Thank you all for believing in our students and all that you do for them within District 211. Congratulations. Our next awardee is Schaumburg High School psychologist Pam Enright. She is recognized in the Those Who Excel Support Personnel category. An administrator at Schaumburg High School described Pam as their go-to person when students have found themselves in at-risk situations or activities. Pam's peers have said that even in the most demanding of circumstances, she demonstrates extraordinary patience amazing follow-through, and goes to the greatest lengths to ensure students and parents are aware of their choices. Pam works on the school's Life and Learning Strategies team to assist students with a variety of disabilities. Outside of Schaumburg High School, Pam works with her colleagues across the district to build initiatives to help at-risk students, and she had a vital role in the creation of the district's social-emotional threat assessments. Thank you, Pam, for your dedication to our students' well-being and emotional health. Congratulations. Our next awardee is Hoffman Estates Special Education teacher, Katie McGarvey, who is recognized as the Early Career Educator category. Katie comes from a family of teachers who nurtured her desire to enter education. Following a college course in special education, Katie noticed students with special needs were not getting the assistance they needed to be fully successful in class. From that point forward, she changed her major to special education and dedicated herself to do all she could to give every student the tools they needed to be successful in any class. One parent described Katie's compassion for education as contagious. The parent went on to say that during the current pandemic, Katie's inspiration has only shone through more. The parent said Katie treats each student like her own child. One of Katie's peers discussed how in only 2 years at Hoffman Estates High School, Katie has volunteered throughout the community to aid the special education department in coaching Special Olympics and taking on leadership roles in the school's annual Cupcakes with Friends fundraising event. As a part of this year's Teacher of the Year Awards, Illinois has added a new ancillary category, including Special Education Teacher of the Year. We are pleased to announce that Katie McGarvey was named the first ever Illinois Special Education Teacher of the Year for 2021. Katie, congratulations on this honor. Our next Those Who Excel Award winner is Julie Novak, recognized in the School Administrator category. Julie has been the principal at James B. Conant High School for 6 years and has worked in District 211 for more than 25 years. She has described her career as being focused on equity, belonging, and excellence. She sees her role as one of service to students, parents, faculty, and our community. Julie has been described as a highly talented, perceptive, and encouraging instructional leader. A student at Conant High School said that Julie always takes the time to listen to everyone regardless of the challenges she's facing that day or dealing with at the moment. A fellow District 211 principal called Julie a fearless and determined leader. When a student was looking to create a new club to focus on diversity, she stated that Julie didn't talk to her as though she was a naive teenager, but rather she was very receptive and supported the creation of this new organization. The student went on to say that Julie was a catalyst that changed her life. Julie, congratulations on your well-deserved award, and thank you for all that you do for Conant High School and District 211. Palatine High School mathematics teacher and dean of students, Joyce Richardson, is our next awardee. She's being recognized in the category of classroom teacher. When Joyce was in high school, she said that math was one of her harder subjects. It wasn't until college that when tutoring a high school student in remedial math and seeing his reaction when he succeeded, that Joyce knew she had found her calling. For more than 2 decades, Joyce has continued to strive with her students to help them to achieve and feel success. One student recalled feeling overwhelmed by her calculus class after failing a test. The student said that Joyce met with her for an extra hour almost daily, providing insight, resources, and practice materials. She said that following Joyce's help, she felt better prepared for college calculus more than any other class. Outside the classroom, Joyce has dedicated her time to help students through Palatine High School's Say Yes to the Dress program that provides students an opportunity to obtain homecoming and prom dresses regardless of financial abilities. A fellow teacher said that while she and her peers daily discuss how they can better serve students, Joyce is the one that drives the change and makes the difference. Joyce, for all you have done and continue to do for your students at Palatine High School and District 211, thank you and congratulations. Tom Spizzali. I don't think Tom is here today, but what I would like to do is recognize him because of his position in the educational service personnel category. Tom's primary duty is as a teacher assistant at Fremd High School, and he's the facilitator of the tutoring center and guided study hall. His desire to help students reach their full potential can be seen across the school. Principal Kurt Teneper said that Tom's proactive approach to dealing with potential issues and self-sufficient work ethic are the reasons why the tutoring center is successful. One teacher said that Tom has helped students develop helpful testing strategies, organizational methods, and that Tom has described by others as always being positive and able to communicate effortlessly with students from all walks of life. This is just one of Tom's dedication to students when he notices that a student is struggling. He's worked to become a trusted adult, making himself available for students and working with other teachers on the students' behalf. Many students refer to him as their school dad. We recognize Tom tonight for all that he's done for our Fremd students and District 211. On behalf of the principals that are here this evening, as well as the Board of Education, thank you for all you do. You certainly are an integral part of our district, and you make us who we are today.
All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comments.
We'll have to do a little bit of a transition here.
Sure.
Thank you to our award winners, and your golden apple is waiting for you outside the door.
All right, next item on our agenda is public comments. According to Phase 4 guidelines issued by the state of Illinois, no more than 50 individuals may be gathered together in a specific location at one time. The Board of Education meeting is being held this evening in the auditorium at Hoffman Estates High School with a maximum of 50 individuals. The board meeting also will be simulcast in classrooms near the auditorium to accommodate any additional guests beyond the auditorium capacity. The Board of Education meeting is also being conducted via an electronic video conferencing application known as Zoom. Tonight, public comments will be in person and via Zoom. Individuals who wanted to address the board via in-person or Zoom were asked to sign up today between the hours of 4:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Individuals were asked to indicate if they wanted to address the Board of Education in person or via Zoom. If more than 20 people completed the link to address the board, a random system was used to select and order 30 names. Since public comment is to be heard tonight, we will hear from 19 people who signed up, and we will hear from all 19 people. All 19 people will have an opportunity to address the board. A list of individuals who will address the board and the order of the individuals addressing the board was posted on the Zoom meeting screen at 7:15 p.m. Each person who addresses the board will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. You will be told when you have 1 minute remaining, though you may not hear that if you are speaking via Zoom. Public comment will be heard for all 19 people. I will call each person's name when it is their time to address the board. If you are in person, please come to the podium and state your name for the record. Though not required, you may state if you are a resident of the district. If you are addressing the board via Zoom, your microphone will be turned on after I call your name. Again, please state your name for the record, and if you wish, indicate if you are a resident of the district. When you are finished, your microphone will be turned off. Speakers should please keep their masks on when addressing the board at the podium. Any individual's unused time or place in order may not be deferred to another individual. Our first person tonight via Zoom, Andrea Shaw.
Hello everyone, my name is Ariana Shaw and I'm a sophomore at Conant High School. I'm here today to talk about the district's handling of sexual assault and harassment, and I want to start by sharing the story of a fellow Conant friend who wishes to stay anonymous. She says, for most of my freshman and sophomore year, I was stalked by a guy who would always text me saying things like, I see you. He would also describe what I was wearing. I didn't know who he was and I didn't know what he looked like. I went to Conant multiple times and they told me it was just a guy who liked me and that I shouldn't worry about it. They said boys will be boys. He would constantly text me and I would always block him, but he always found a way to contact me. He left me alone for a while, but during the fall of my sophomore year, I went on vacation and when I got back, I got threatening texts from him saying that if I left again, he would meet me in person and that I wouldn't like the outcome, implying that he was going to hurt me. I went to school with the messages and they said it was probably one of my friends pranking me because I was gone for so long. I was scared to go to school. Throughout the rest of the year, it was the same messages, but they stopped at the end of the sophomore year. The school never did anything. They just said that boys will be boys. That's the end of her story. As someone who's been touched without consent at my old school, I can understand feeling scared to go to school. I felt as if my body didn't belong to me, and I was always looking over my shoulder, scared that it would happen again. Going through something like this, we both know how important it is that kids in our school feel safe and heard. Although both our stories weren't a direct sexual assault, they were harassment and an invasion of privacy. And in my friend's scenario, the school was notified and did nothing about it. This is one of many stories of sexual assault and harassment that the schools and district haven't handled properly. As students, we want everyone to feel safe walking the halls of our schools. However, that is difficult when the staff in schools aren't being supportive and believing these victims. We ask not only for support from our
You have one
schools,
more minute?
but more lessons about consent, boundaries, and peer pressure. If teachers properly enforce these values in their classrooms and teach about what is and isn't okay, beyond the stereotypical scenarios that they currently teach, people will begin to realize and understand what they can and cannot do. And while teaching such values won't prevent all rape or harassment, it'll definitely help victims to feel more supported. We do not mean to demean the efforts of the district, but we want everyone to feel safe and heard because everyone deserves safety and love. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Next person, Roshni Arun.
Point of order, is there any way we could have the names that were previously displayed back up on the screen? It helps me in my note taking. Remember we had a list that was on here previously? Could we put that back up?
Kathy, do you have that? Christina?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Roshnir Roon, and I am a junior at Palatine High School. I'm here to talk about two things, sexual assault prevention, and for Cable to put sexual assault prevention on the agenda for next month's board meeting. As a D211 student, I'm aghast at the amount of unaddressed sexual assault that occurs in D211. Insofar, I believe that the district does not do enough to prevent future cases of assault, as well as the district is not being fully transparent with the public about this issue. In order to take proactive steps to counteract this very prevalent issue, I believe that it is crucial to include this into the education of the students. Through this inclusion in the curriculum of the wellness classes, students will be better prepared to know what is right from wrong. Currently, schools in D211 do not even address sexual assault, which perpetuates the culture and stigma surrounding the issue. By not being transparent, the district is stifling the voices of those that need to be amplified. Plain and simple, it is just not right. Sexual violence and the culture that surrounds it is a form of systemic oppression, and D211 has an obligation to put an end to it within schools. That is why I urge the board to put sexual assault prevention on the agenda for next month's meeting. I urge the board to listen to students when we tell you that this is a big problem that occurs under the umbrella of D211. And most importantly, I urge the board to address this issue and take proactive steps to prevent sexual assault. Thank you.
Thank you. Jasmineundy.
Good evening. My name is Jasmineundy, and I'm a senior at Conant High School. Over the nearly 4 years I have been a member or a student of this district, I have observed efforts such as the equity team, focus groups, and work of organizations, student-led organizations such as the Sexual Assault Prevention Campaign, is first steps in discussing student demands for accountability and change. I directly challenge this board to effectively address the most pressing issues which affect the student body every day. Foremost, the culture in which sexual violence within our school thrives has been detrimental to D211 students beyond measure. This is of utmost importance to the student body as sexual violence contributes to substantial mental health challenges, social stigma, and safety concerns which deter student success in D211 schools and beyond. As an upcoming graduate, I believe it is necessary to create actionable items today which analyze and address the student body's concerns. I am directly calling upon Kim Cavell to honor her efforts regarding sexual education reform in her professional endeavors by adding sexual assault prevention as a topic of discussion under item 10D of today's agenda. We must do better today to forge an equitable tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and I relinquish the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you. Faith Massey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Massey, and I attend James B. Conant High School. Thank you. Today, I want to start off with a brief story. Someone asked me, who is your Title IX admin of your school? And I thought it was like a quiz or something. I was like, I'm not sure. So then I proceeded to research, as one does, and it was very difficult to find that information. I looked through the calendar, I looked through handbooks, and I eventually found the district one. I think it's Eric Lazowski. If I get that wrong, I am completely sorry. But I found his name, and I was like, oh, okay, still don't know my answer. So I reached out to my peers, and I was like, hey, do y'all know? And they were as dumbfounded as I was. So continuing in our research, we eventually found that it was Mr. Langer. And I have nothing against Mr. Langer. He is also an awesome man. But I just couldn't help but think outside of myself, knowing that him and I have a good connection. Does everyone have that same connection? Will everyone feel comfortable with going with someone like that when they're put in a detriment to where they need the Title IX? So I propose that there are a place where there's multiple perspectives to look towards anything sexual assault related. If you're put in that certain predicament, you often feel isolated, alone, and unsupported. When you don't have this research of how the processes go, or where and what tools you need to know, or even if you don't know how to articulate yourself, you're already below, you're already unsupported. And we are your babies. Everyone in this D211 school board, we are your babies and we're crying out. And all we want is education and transparency. Secondly, I think this is highly worth your time. I think this causes us to feel more comfortable and more safe in our schools. And I also propose that there be a student council. I can confidently say all the pupils in this room, we're speaking out because we're crying out. But what about those who aren't?
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. There are people who want to speak, and we just want you to listen. And if you have us at your disposal, we will talk to you, we will tell you, we will share you our stories. But everyone has their own different walk of life, and we just want you to listen to us. There's a quote, education is for improving the lives of others and leaving your community better than what you found it. That's all we aim to do, and that's what we're here to speak with you about. Lastly, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Steele.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Steele, parent and taxpayer in District 211. I would like to speak on 3 topics today, although briefly in the time allotted, but find it important to bring up in this public forum to the board. Experiences of a high school student are somewhat shape us as people as we grow. Sports, dances, extracurriculars, clubs, lunchtime in the cafeteria, passing periods, bus rides to and from school. I could go on, but the experiences for our high schoolers for almost 12 months have been taken from them. Some have given back, sort of, but overall taken from them. Many of us ask why, and mostly the answer is because COVID. But now, almost 12 months later, can we really keep saying because COVID? I do not have the time in this forum to address each experience and the whys and the how comes, along with any possible solutions. But what I can ask is for experiences to be given back to them. Sure, we can say, well, we have sports, but do we really? There's health screeners, masks, tickets, circles and dots to sit and stand on, athletes being called out for a mask below the nose when they are sucking wind, and I could go on here as well. We can say, well, band is back, but is it? Because students have been told, well, you can't play the flute here because COVID. Or, the whole band's not here, I'm the only one. Is that really being in a band? We can say, well, you can go to school and ride on the bus every day. But is sitting in a seat at 6 feet from the next student on a cold, snowy bus a good experience? We can keep saying because COVID and because of safety, but our students are smarter than this. They are tired of this. Yes, they are safe in the name of COVID, and yes, we need to do better as a district and stop blaming COVID and guidelines as the reason we cannot move forward. We need to think outside the box and provide answers and workarounds, because giving
You have 1 minute left.
2 tickets and forcing grown adults to stand on a circle inside of a gym is not a solution. Conditions. I can go on for 30 minutes on this topic alone, but we'll try to hit the highlights. Is yellow taping the water fountains for the kids providing a good condition? If a student forgets their water bottle and the cafe is closed, how do they get a drink? Why are the vending machines not accessible? Why is breakfast and lunch passed out when they are not allowed to eat it inside the school? It seems wasteful. While I understand this is federally funded, is the food being offered to those that it is funded for? I think the answer is no, as my daughter is offered food every day. Is there data on food waste? Why is food being passed out and not allowed to be eaten in the building? I'm going to forward to communication. Now that so much virtual is being shoved down everyone's throats, we all know we must be savvy and show up for our technology. Our students have emails, Schoology, Zoom, Infinite Campus. There's a lot of info and a lot is asked of them.
Time has expired.
I hope that some of these things can be addressed, and I will be emailing my comments to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Genevieve Wolf.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Genevieve. I'm a senior at Conant, and I'm here to talk to you about the sexual assault problems that are going on in your high schools. 1 out of every 6 American women have been the victim of sexual violence. And I'm telling you that whatever you think that statistic is among D211 students, the actual number of assaults is much higher than that, because 3 out of every 4 sexual assaults go unreported. I'm a part of these statistics, and I have friends who are part of these statistics. And I know that this is hard to listen to, it's hard to talk about, it's even harder to experience. However, more can be done to prevent sexual violence in this district. Prevention starts with education, proper education from professionals, not from teachers who already have a million other things on their plates, and counselors who already have 1,000 other students to deal with on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, show us that you care about our voices. Listen to what we have to say. I'm asking you to add sexual assault prevention to the March meeting agenda. I will be here to see what the actual result is of this request. I'm asking you to take the necessary steps in bridging the gap between students and the administration. Sexual violence is a district-wide epidemic. I would like to see the board do more to protect us. Please work together on this. We want to work with you. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you. Abigail Ramo.
Hello, my name is Abigail Ramo, and I am a senior at Conant High School. I am here to enforce that sexual assault is not just a D211 issue. I am a member of the Kenneth Youth Center's Youth Advisory Council, and this February, a few weeks ago, a week and a half, I believe, we put together a mental health survey. Some of these questions involved our experiences with sexual violence. This group is not just for D211 students. This is a group for anyone in the area. Sexual violence impacts our whole generation. It impacts much farther than just one school district. I myself am a repeat sexual assault survivor, and I am most definitely not alone in my experiences. Sexual assault has not been dealt with unless it is multiple victims speaking out about one assailant. It took multiple females to come out about an incident during the spring of 2019 at Conant High School for it to be taken seriously. This was the only time in my high school experience where anything has been done to support the victims. I have reported others, but more steps have been taken to help the person who did it than to help myself. Consent needs to be pushed to be a more vital part of sex education and needs to be pushed right off the bat. High school starts with 13-year-olds and 18-year-olds being thrown into the same hallways. The underclassmen need to know that you can say no to things that you don't want to do, and that people older than you don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. I didn't know that you could say no to someone who made you feel uncomfortable, even if they were older than you. I was taught to respect and obey those who were older, and it took the single overview of consent in the health curriculum.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. It took one single overview of consent that we had in health class to teach you that you can't allow people to touch you if you don't want you to, even if they are older than you. Setting clear boundaries needs to be pushed as early as possible. And as I said, 13-year-olds and 18-year-olds are being pushed into the same hallways, and not all of us know that we can say no to people that we don't want to touch us and cross our boundaries. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Juliet Abarca.
Hi, my name is Julia Abarca, and I attend Palatine High School, and I'm a junior. And more than that, I'm a D211 student who is shocked and very much saddened by the lack of awareness on sexual assault and harassment which is occurring in our schools. And one of my best friends who attends Palatine High School has told me to share her story anonymously with you, as she was pressured to engage in things she didn't want to or agree to. This all happened when she was not consciously aware in a right mindset to understand what was going on or to make these right decisions, while the other student was fully aware and knew she wasn't. When speaking about her situation to only a couple of her friends, she was silenced. And this is a really toxic culture that is going on, as she lost a lot of her friends because they decided to believe the person hurting her rather than the victim. This is a toxic culture that must be stopped. And this hurts me to see the people I care about having to deal with these situations. I urge the board to put this as a topic that needs to be addressed for next meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sanjana Rajesh.
Before I begin, I'd like to thank the board for giving us the space and the opportunity to share our thoughts today. My name is Sanjana, and I'm a student within this district. I've been passionate about sexual violence prevention since I heard about some of the things we've been learning in our health classes. For instance, one of the things some students I know were taught is that if you didn't practice abstinence, you were a flower that was having its petals picked off. I remember in my own health class, we only learned about consent in the form of a 5-minute video making the analogy of consent to tea. Since then, I'm aware that health curriculum has improved, especially since it's been integrated into the wellness curriculum, which is a great step. But there's large portions of our schools that haven't had the opportunity to learn things in detail. Even now, students say they need to be learning more about consent, sexual violence, and healthy relationships. Today, I am speaking on behalf of students that have said to me and others, I don't feel safe at my school. Today, I am speaking on behalf of students that don't feel protected by the people that are supposed to protect them. I've heard about many instances of sexual violence from my friends, many having occurred in groups involved with the school. I know many people that have been in abusive relationships, especially emotionally abusive, but they didn't know what abuse looked like, so they didn't know how to set boundaries. I'm also here today because I'm calling for more transparency. We District 211 students are reassured that all reports of sexual violence are taken seriously, and I have no doubt that is true. but we don't know how they're taken seriously, and we don't know what the process is. Many of us District 211 students aren't aware of what Title IX is or how it protects us from sexual violence. I didn't know that every school is required to have a Title IX coordinator, and I don't know who mine is at my school, let alone at the other District 211 schools. When the Title IX guidelines were changed on the part of the government last year, students weren't informed about these crucial policies and how they affect us and how these changes affect us. Thank you. A student I know reached out to Ms. Cavill asking for information, and that's when we were able to take a look at District 211 policies, but not until then. Most importantly, students don't know who to talk to or who to go to for help, and they don't know that all staff are mandated reporters. Students should not have to build the trust with administration when they do mistrust them. I would like to see this topic addressed at future board meetings. I'd like to see more transparency. I'd like to see student feedback on education and policies that affect them. I'd like to see the district listen to people who couldn't speak here today. I'd like to see more of an effort to promote a positive culture, especially in school-sanctioned clubs and sports that aren't as closely monitored as classrooms are. For every student who doesn't feel safe at school or to talk to their peers or administration, I ask you to help make schools a safer place for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marilyn Wolter.
Pardon me?
Okay, thank you. Hannah Large.
Hello, my name is Hannah Large and I'm a senior at Conant High School. And to be honest, I'm hurt and I'm disappointed. The topic of sexual assault is one that's very close to me. Last year, after several students, many of whom I'm very close to, had reported sexual assault and harassment to their team rooms following a tweet asking people to share their experiences, I and a few peers knew that we needed to better educate our student population. These were seniors just a year away from adulthood that were so severely uneducated. We contacted the wellness department so that we could work on improving sexual education, specifically in regards to consent, bystander awareness, and the steps taken to report. I, along with some other passionate students, have continued working on this extensive project with wellness and administration for over a year now, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done. But I also know that they care. I know that they speak with sincerity and genuine concern at our sexual assault prevention campaign meetings, and that's the issue. I know because I work with them closely. The student population doesn't know, though. When the students aren't able to find any accessible or comprehensive information on sexual assault or harassment, they don't know that you care. And I have this really big weakness of giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, and that's hurt me a lot when working with people, even within my own school. I try to believe that you, as servants of our community, are all genuinely good people who care about the students that are affected by this. But I honestly think that you care about your public image more. When huge issues are covered up and not talked about, it helps to protect you, but it hurts the people affected by these issues. This past summer, when the Instagram account I know you are all very aware of, A Letter to D211, gained huge traction by sharing the stories of victims all over our district, it disappeared without a trace after we received some borderline threatening comments at our first SAPC meeting about it. Sometimes I wonder what happened there, and I'm sure that some of you know. Thank you. I implore you to stop avoiding the discussion of these issues. The community never heard a response to that account or the stories it shared. It makes people think that you don't care, but I know that you do, at least to some degree. It must be made abundantly clear that assaulting, harassing, or grooming someone is unacceptable. It must be made abundantly clear that perpetrators are dealt with properly and that victims get proper care. But right now, that's not clear. After working with Conant administration for over a year, it's still unclear to me. Clarity and transparency are essential. Inform your student population and keep them safe. Unfortunately, for many students, high school is the first exposure that they have to sexual assault, whether they experience it, a friend experience it, or they discuss it in health. Unfortunately, this also won't be their first exposure, and I can guarantee that. Students need to be prepared and informed, and I hope that you can make that possible by focusing on ensuring that students trust you and can truly know that you care. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sophia Steele.
Good evening. My name is Sophia Steele, and I attend Hoffman Estates High School in person every day. While I am grateful I attend school every day, and I am dancing on the competition team, I would like to address the board about some things that don't really make sense throughout the day that can easily be revised. The hallways during passing periods are completely empty, even though there are kids that come into school. The passing periods are 15 minutes, but you guys split them up into 3 parts. While I understand that you are trying to minimize the amount of kids gathering together, it makes no sense because kids still will gather together simply because they just want to socialize. Secondly, you walk into school and you have the opportunity to get breakfast, and when you leave, you can have the opportunity to grab lunch. However, you aren't allowed to eat in the classroom. This seems counterintuitive because you are handing out food, but we can't eat it. It's not only the food that the school hands out, but why can't I eat a protein bar after I work out? If I'm spread apart from everyone else, this shouldn't be an issue. These are simple things that can be fixed just by putting rational thought behind it. I look forward to hearing your thoughts later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariana Haley.
Hi, my name is Ariana Haley. I go to Hoffman Estates High School. My peers before me have experienced and witnessed some absolutely disgusting things, and they have done an amazing job being vulnerable and trying to express themselves in order to get any sort of help at all. But this is not what has to happen before you start paying attention. People should not have to get up here and cry and rehash traumatic events for you to listen and to care. And we can sit here and we can boast, you guys can boast about the strong diversity in our high school or the high standard for academic rigor, whether it's GPA, whether it's test scores, or even athletics. But that means absolutely nothing if people cannot walk into school and feel or be safe every single day. You made such an emphasis on trying to get children back in school, which is a valiant effort, but means nothing if you cannot ensure that they will be safe and taken care of when they are there. You're hosting this board meeting to hear people out about sexual assault policies, but I really hope that as people have come up here and they have cried and again rehash traumatic events about what has happened to them, I hope that you will take that and actually listen, because there are students on their knees practically begging for you to listen and begging you to do something for us, please. Thanks, I rescind my time.
Thank you. Ella Steele.
Hello, I am Ella Steele and I am an 8th grader at Eisenhower Junior High. I have spoken at the District 54 Board of Education meeting, and I want to address the school year I will be attending next year. Because of COVID, I have lost almost all of my junior high experiences. I did not think this was possible. I thought for sure I would have a proper graduation or the opportunity to play my favorite sports such as basketball, volleyball, and cheer. But I do not think that will happen. I want to have an incoming freshman night, and I want to be in a school as a freshman full-time. I want to see the inside of Hoffman Estates High School full-time and eat in the cafeteria. I want to play basketball, golf, softball, as I am working hard to try out for these teams. I want these experiences and to make new friends. We all do. So much has been taken away from us, and it is just crazy to me that adults cannot figure this out. That adults are making the kids miss out on so much, and I do not know why. We have treatments, we can wear the masks, we can social distance, and now there are even vaccines. The time is now to figure it all out so all of the incoming freshmen can start in school and be in school full time. The students need it, and we cannot go backwards. Please consider what I'm saying. I know I'm speaking on behalf of the hundreds of 8th graders. Thank you.
Thank you. Alikithodakura.
Hi, my name is Alikithodakura, and I'm a junior at Palatine. More than a junior at PHS, I'm a D211 student who is astounded by the lack of awareness and activity on preventing sexual assault in D211 as a whole. It's an increasing issue in this district and is starting to garner attention amongst students. I'm here for a few reasons. First, I'd like to request CAVL to put sexual assault prevention on the agenda for next month's board meeting. Second, one of the biggest problems is that the school curriculum regarding sexual education is outdated and does not go into depth on consent and sexual assault. This is not okay. Revising the curriculum to include these things will properly educate students on such matters and can reduce the prevalence of sexual assault in this district. Ultimately, this will increase transparency and teach students consent and widen communication for students to speak more freely about this topic. Finally, I would like for you to discuss the possibility of a district-wide student-run council centered around sexual assault prevention. As students, we see the issues at school that are invisible to the administration, and furthermore, our varying exposure to this issue coupled with our open communication with fellow students would allow for such a council to come up with unique and successful ideas to prevent sexual assault and how to handle the aftermath. If you were to ask anyone at school if they know someone who's been assaulted, I can guarantee that we can all point to someone, and that's incredibly sad. However, the stigma surrounding sexual assault is cultivating a hostile environment at school that currently silences victims. Seeing my fellow classmates not speaking up simply based on a lack of transparency is so sad to me. It's completely depressing that fellow students could do such despicable things and the victims, our friends, feel that they have no support. Did you know that every single person's story of sexual assault that I've heard from my school is unreported? That's really sad, and I really want my friends to feel like that they have the support at the school to speak up about this issue. All of us students here want change, but we can't do this on our own, so I implore you to fight this problem through transparency and open communication with students. Thank you.
Thank you. Robie Volkov.
Good evening, my name is Robie Volkov, and I am a parent of students at Schaumburg High School and also a Hoffman Estates High School alumni. I just wanted to commend the student speakers here tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at future meetings and hearing how your academic year has been going as well this year. Thank you as always for your time and listening ears. I would really appreciate any feedback any of you has as well. I'm growing more frustrated than ever as we close in a year of education for our students that has been wasted and my senior missing out on everything her senior year. We seem to have found a way to get sports back and even spectators and made that a priority, but continue to fail academically. Trying to get my kids to attend school in person is like trying to get youngsters to eat all their veggies. My senior is an academic achiever and has always liked school, but being the only one or one of very few in a classroom with a teacher who is teaching to a Zoom audience is just not enjoyable nor effective. I cringe to think of what the learning gap will be like for teachers to try to recap next year. I'm also wanting to share my discontentment with trying to plan a post-prom event for the students at Schaumburg High School. I'm co-president of the Schaumburg High School VIP Booster Club, and we are desperately trying to plan an outing for the upperclassmen, especially the seniors. We have contacted various venues and have proceeded, as Dr. Small recommended at one of our meetings, with trying to find multiple options, including outdoor and indoor. With these uncertain times, we thought it would be best to do a survey to the students and parents to better gauge our participant numbers. When we asked the school to distribute the survey electronically, we were told that we should hold off putting off a survey out because, one, we don't want to give false hopes to students and parents that something will be offered, and two, we are trying to be equal and do things collectively at all 5 schools, and if Schaumburg High School sends out a survey, then the other schools will question why only Schaumburg High School sent one out. This just seems like an unnecessary obstacle. The survey could include a clause clearly stating that there are no guarantees for any event to take place, but that for planning purposes, we need to gauge the numbers. It is a difficult year to plan events. You may have an overabundance of participants, or you may have the reverse. It's a survey, not a legal document that would be binding by any party. A survey could be distributed by all 5 high schools. In addition, I did not see any concern for equality at last year's graduation ceremonies when some schools got ceremonies at Boomer Stadium and some a drive-by in the high school parking lot. I don't want to be negative, but my intuition is telling me that the administration really won't allow an event to happen at all no matter what. Please tell me I'm wrong. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to any feedback.
Thank you. Joye Slavic.
Hello, my name is Joyce Slavic. First of all, I'd like to applaud the young women who spoke up for sexual violence education awareness. I support their call for more education and transparency. They're very brave. As a parent of two D211 students struggling through this past year, I'd like to thank the board for their efforts in following the science during this unprecedented and difficult year. I know we all want to get kids back in school as quickly as possible. I want to thank you for continuing to reevaluate possibilities to make this happen and for listening to the Department of Public Health guidelines. We as parents and community members are not experts in dealing with public health emergencies, so we must turn to the medical experts. Even they've been revising and learning during this past year. And according to the latest CDC guidelines, elementary schools and high schools are not dealing with the same terms and risks. Trying to mitigate risks with mask and social distancing would not be possible if we fully opened up schools. As a cancer survivor who also has elderly parents, I'm also concerned for the health of everyone in my family and my community, including teachers, staff, and students. I have one student who's now in school full-time and one student who is remote full-time, and I appreciate having that option. Student suicides have always been of a concern, and we must identify and fund support for students and families struggling, especially in these times, and considering some of the things the young women have spoken about. I just recently found out about the intervention team at FREMD. I'd like to ask that we work on promoting and supporting programs like this, perhaps through remote training sponsored by the Booster Club or former parent-student support groups. Also educating families to lock up their firearms using free gun locks from the Palatine Police Station. With the vaccine rollout finally getting the federal planning it so badly needs, we'll get through this and get back to the business of providing equitable and outstanding education opportunities for our students. Thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you. Stacey Gale.
Hello, my name is Stacey Gale. I have a few questions I would like addressed tonight. When will D211 offer full-day in-person learning to students? The plan presented in July and approved by the board said it was easy to pivot from one to the other, hybrid, remote, full-day. We've seen it move to the two lowest educational offerings. What needs to happen to get it back to full-day every day? The in-person attendance continues to be well below the safe threshold, and it's past time to pivot to full day. The approved July resolution had A/B half days, so students would have more time to complete their work. In the last board meeting, Superintendent Small said the percentage of no credit grades doubled. She failed to mention incompletes increased by 1,900%. Obviously, the plan isn't working. 26% of those incompletes are in English, 23% in math. According to Ms. Small, an incomplete means the student has not mastered the basic learning skills. It is well past time to move to full day in person. When will it happen? What is the district doing to address academic inequalities? Over 60% of incompletes are from the two schools with the greatest low-income populations, 43% at Palatine High School and 23% at Hoffman. The academic equity gap smacks you in the face when you look at SAT prep. Once again, the schools with the greatest low-income population offers the fewest hours of preparation. The school with the lowest number of low-income students offers the most. Palatine High School offers 10 hours of SAT, 5 in the morning or 5 in the afternoon. It's really 5 hours, not 10 hours of prep. Hoffman, 19 hours, Schaumburg, 24. Conant, 30. Friend, 85. and 5 actual practice tests. Frem has 1,600% more preparation. Do you hear me? 1,600% more than Palatine. Is this academic equity? The District 211 administration is inexperienced and unprofessional. This became crystal clear this week when I emailed Barrington School District Superintendent Brian Harris asking questions about the impact remote learning had on his academic performance. He replied within an hour with grade data from the first half of the year. Even more impressive, he informed me Barrington is offering 5 full days in person to any student wishing to attend. They added English and math, and they're requiring those who need additional support to be in person. When will D211 begin to prioritize student learning?
Thank you. Jessica Hinkle.
Good evening. I have a student at Schaumburg High School. I have 2 topics that I would like to discuss. The first is in-person learning. What's next? I'd like to start off by saying, although the process was frustratingly much longer than it should have been to get them back in school, I am grateful that they are back to 5 days a week. But there's still more to be done. If education of our students is the most important priority, then why isn't in-person learning a focus on the agenda? What are the next steps, and why are they not on the agenda? I believe that the board needs to be transparent and provide parents with insight to planning taking place. This should be a topic for every board meeting until we return to the level of academics and extracurricular activities that we were before the pandemic started. In talking with my student, his friends, his teachers and neighbors, the number of in-person students is much lower than what was originally planned to come back. One of the main issues that came up was transportation. Today, my blue-lipped son came home stating that it was actually snowing in his bus. There's actually a video circulating today of Conant, a school bus from Conant in the same situation. I understand the thought process behind having windows and ceiling hatches open, but with the number of students on the buses and the ability to social distance, why are the windows open while snowing and or raining, and more importantly, when we have below 0 temperatures? This is putting our students' health at risk more than COVID is. Additionally, many students are waiting at their bus stops without coats on because they have no lockers or a backpack big enough to put their coats in. With a number of students, or lack thereof, in the schools, why haven't lockers been assigned? Additionally, the busing app, it has a lot to be desired. If you actually paid for this busing app as a district, you should probably request your money back. The next topic I'd like to discuss is the finance meeting. I attended it last month or a couple weeks ago, and while there were 3 topics brought up, and I appreciate the efforts that went into it, I feel that they are a disservice to your community. When I moved back to this district, I did so, by the way, I am a student, a Hoffman alum. I moved back to this district because the District 211 was one of the best in the area. Now that many people that support the 3 plans, I know many people support the 3 plans that were laid out because whatever we need to do for our great education of our kids. But I ask you this, is it still great, or are we riding the coattails of past years? As an alum of the district, I recall the focus on academics, and it was the district to be in based on the academics. If the number of tax dollars collected are correlated to the academic excellence,
time has ended.
Then why aren't any of the students ranked in the top 10 or 15 in the state? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the auditorium tonight who was not on the list who would like the opportunity to address the board? If so, if you could just raise your hand, please. Okay, thank you. That concludes the public comments. The next item on our agenda is presentations. We have a presentation concerning the long-range financial planning and fiscal year 21 update. Dr. Small.
In October 2020, as the board continued the discussions surrounding the December levy adoption, There also continued the plan for an abatement consideration from January through March of this year, with the understanding that an abatement filed in March would have the same benefit to the taxpayer as if it was approved in December. The land revenue was not yet received as of October, and if an abatement was issued, there would be no one-time use of the land sale. There were 4 variables that were finalized by January. First, the 2020 CPI, which was projected at 1.0 and was finalized at 1.4, making the long-range financials more accurate. Secondly, the planned revenue of the land was received. Third, if any additional 2019 tax revenue were received, that additional unbudgeted revenue would be added to the financial projections. And finally, the FY21 operating funds would be updated to the mid-year projections. If an abatement or change to the total amount levied in the December of 2020 is going to change, the abatement must be filed in the county by the last day of March of this year. If this occurs, the new amount levied by the district is reflected in the second installment of the 2020 tax bills. The long-range financial planning in tonight's presentation will include the land sale revenue, the 2020 CPI that is now determined and sets the maximum levy for the December 2021 levy of 1.4. Capital priorities is set by the district strategic plan. Student fees for the 21-22 school year is presented tonight, and forecasted year-end revenue and expenses for FY21. These factors are all a part of tonight's projections and portray the level of risk taken in future years for remaining debt-free in terms of the financial status of the district, which saved the taxpayer money of an additional debt service levy, and the stability for maintaining operation, educational, and facility improvements for our current and future students. Tonight's abatement recommendation takes into account the risk factors and uses the revenue of the land sale for the abatement versus a one-time capital project at each school or increasing fund balances for future uses as needed. Lauren?
Thank you and good evening. I am pleased to be able to provide an updated presentation for you following the presentation that was provided earlier this month at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. As Dr. Small shared, we will be presenting updated information tonight on our 5-year financial forecast, discuss the establishment of student fees for the upcoming school year, and take a look at our long-term financial stability with consideration of a possible levy abatement. I'm pleased to present this information to you and discuss the impact of these decisions on our long-range financial forecast. In all that we do, we strive to use our resources as efficiently as possible while ensuring that we continue to prioritize quality programs and operations throughout our district. The last financial forecast that was presented was in the fall and was in conjunction with our levy recommendation. Tonight, this presentation has a revised 5-year financial forecast, which includes updated information and assumptions. In the blue circles are 3 critical pieces of information which we know now, but did not know in the fall, and I'll review each of these on future slides. In the green stars are assumptions that will be made in the model that you'll see tonight, including a student fee recommendation for next year, a potential property tax abatement on the 2020 levy, and updated capital priorities. All of this information was carefully reviewed to provide you with a financial forecast which ultimately maintains the stability of the district with acceptable amounts of risk. As I previously mentioned, there are a few items that we now know or have more information about than we did a few months ago. One of these is the land sale. The sale of our 60 acres is now complete, and we've received the proceeds from that sale exceeding $17.7 million. That revenue has been recorded as a special item in the current fiscal year budget. We no longer have to speculate about if the land sale will close, which is what our discussion was when we were introducing our levy. Now know that it is a closed sale. Second, we now know that the CPI for the calendar year 2020 is 1.4%. Until we have this information, we use projections in our financial forecast. This is a critical piece of information, and it will establish our PTEL limit for the 2021 levy. We'd previously estimated this amount to be 1%, so the increase to 1.4% is favorable. This chart on the right shows the 10-year history of CPI. The 5-year historical average of CPI is now 2%. It is our practice to use the 5-year average as our estimated CPI for the future year levy growth in our projection model. This 5-year average is a significant increase from years 2011 to 2016, where 4 of those years had CPI of less than 2%. Our CPI assumption is the most critical driving factor in the projection model, and it is something that we do not control within the district. Tonight, as we discuss a potential permanent levy abatement, please refer back to this chart and the potential volatility of CPI and the immediate impact it would have on our financial stability. At the time that we prepared the budget, the assumption was that all students would be attending school full-time in person. With the current model that we are operating under, we are experiencing significant budget variances in many line items in our financial statements. Using our first 6 months of actual results as a starting point, we have forecasted where we believe we will end this year compared to our budget plan, assuming that we remain in a hybrid learning scenario through the end of the semester. This slide is a summary of where we predict our revenue to end compared to budget, and you can see that we expect to end the year with approximately $6 million more in revenue than budgeted. The largest contributing factor to this variance is our local property taxes. Due to the pandemic, we expected our collection rate on the second installment of the 2019 property tax collections to be less than it normally would be. This assumption was based on predictions that were shared with us from Cook County, and we estimated our collection rate to be 97%, where the actual collection rate is 98.6%. While this is normal, lower than normal, our normal collection rate is about 99.3%, it is still significantly higher than expected. This factor, along with lower refunds being processed by the courts, is driving our favorable variance in our local property taxes. State and federal aid is also expected to end the year favorably due to higher than expected transportation claim proration and meal bag reimbursements. Fees and other income is also running favorable due to unexpected tip distributions. Offsetting these favorable variances are some swings in the opposite direction or unfavorable variance. Interest rates are lower than predicted. There are no sales of meals to students, and with the recent adoption of reduced summer school fees for the summer, our tuition revenue will end the year in an unfavorable budget position as well. Expenditures are also expected to end the year favorably compared to budget. Within our largest expenditure account, salaries, some of our costs have increased, such as substitute teacher expenses. However, the salaries in areas such as overtime, chaperoning, and transportation have decreased by more. We expect salaries to end the year favorably compared to our budget. Benefits are another large category of expenditures for us, and they've been running favorably year to date. This is mainly attributed to lower than expected Blue Cross Blue Shield bills. The information that we receive from our insurance consultants provides us with an analysis of all of our expenditures by area, and we have information that demonstrates that individuals are putting off elective procedures due to the pandemic, thus lowering our expenses in the short term. Purchase services are running favorably, mainly due to lower special education and homeless student transportation costs. We expect this favorable trend to continue through the end of the year. Supplies are also favorable as we're spending less on our food service, gas and oil for our bus fleet, and classroom supplies. Tuition relates to fees paid for special education students to attend specialized schools which can meet their complex needs. Some parents are choosing to keep their students home during this pandemic, and we are seeing a favorable variance in our expenditures here. Our capital outlay budget of about $19 million is running close to budget as we work to complete a variety of life safety, maintenance, and capital projects. The only area of expense that we expect to end over budget this year is in our non-capitalized equipment. We plan to order a replacement cycle of our PCs and laptops that need to be replaced this summer so that we are able to have them, get them set up, and have them ready to go by the start of the school year. Overall, we're expecting to end the year with revenue in excess of our expenditures of about $3.5 million. Illinois school law permits public school districts to charge fees for consumable items or for student participation in curricular or extracurricular programs. Each year, the Board of Education establishes student user fees for the upcoming school year. Fees are assessed for registration to offset the cost of consumable materials, driver education behind the wheel services, student parking, paid busing, student meals, and summer school. During a typical school year, student fee revenue from those programs equates to about $4.6 million. Students qualifying for free or reduced meals are eligible to have their required school fees waived per board policy. Fee waivers apply to fees such as registration, driver education, and academic summer programs. Optional fees such as paid busing or student parking are not waived. Eligibility criteria for free and reduced national school meal programs is set by the federal government. For the current school year, a family of 4 must have a gross household income of approximately $48,000 to qualify for reduced meals and $34,000 to qualify for free meals, or meet other criteria such as qualifying for federal assistance programs or having a designation as homeless. Currently, the district has approximately 3,800 students who qualify for these benefits and they are therefore eligible to have the appropriate fees waived. In total, our student free and reduced lunch eligibility decreased by about 400 students this year, which is likely the result of the universal waiver of registration fees and student meal costs for the current year. With that decrease, both Palatine and Hoffman Estates High School continue to qualify for Title I funding. Approximately $1.2 million in federal funds is allocated between these schools, which provides supports and services for students that are deemed at higher academic risk. Funding is required to be used to provide increased opportunities for these students to help them meet state learning standards. For the current school year, the board took action to waive or reduce several fees for both the academic year as well as the summer school year. All students have their $170 registration fee, $75 student parking fee, and school meal fees waived for the entire school year. In addition, the board took action just last month to set the summer 2021 fees and reduced or waived fees for almost all academic and extracurricular programs. The district was able to use surplus funds from the prior budget year to provide this fee relief for families. Again, for the upcoming school year, we're recommending that the board consider a waiver of the $170 instructional fee for families, providing approximately $1.4 million in fee relief. We project that the district will end in a favorable ending budget position this year, as we previously reviewed, and propose using surplus funds to offset these fees in next year's budget. All other fees, including those for summer 2022, are recommended to be set at regular rates consistent with a traditional school year. There is no recommended increase in fees in any of those areas from those that were set by the board last year prior to the decision later on to waive them in light of the pandemic. The $1.4 million in waived fees would come from the educational fund. The Board of Education has a policy establishing a minimum fund balance of 33% of the following year's expenditures in both the combined operating funds as well as for the educational fund. Since 2012, the board has taken deliberate action to reduce the district's operating fund balance to a level that is closer to the minimum threshold. The district has utilized fund balance to provide tax relief of more than $33 million to taxpayers by way of abatement, has funded numerous facility improvement projects and life safety projects through our reserves, and has reduced the district's IMRF pension liability and corresponding annual costs. As of the end of the last school year, the district's operating fund balance was 45% and the educational fund balance was 39%. The importance of the district's long-range financial planning process is to review long-range assumptions and ensure that adequate financial resources are available to support our instructional programs, maintain our facilities, support our strategic priorities, including operating debt-free, and have resources available to weather unknown occurrences. Our top priority is to ensure that we're able to continue supporting our instructional programs. In the next section of our presentation, we will provide additional information on our updated 5-year financial forecast, which includes costs for continuity and services while balancing our level of reserves. The federal government has passed 2 stimulus bills to provide relief to the educational sector during the pandemic. Known as the CARES Act, the district was allotted just over $1.1 million in the first round of funding. These funds have been used since the spring of 2020 on items such as thermal scanning, devices at our buildings, hardware and software to support remote learning, including hotspot internet access for our students, spring and summer staffing costs for planning and training, and remediation of and reconnection with students. A portion of the cost of our PPE is reimbursed by this grant, as well as the remainder which is submitted under the FEMA grant. We have recently completed our spending under round 1 of the CARES Act. We've received about $700,000 in reimbursement to date, and we anticipate receiving the remaining amount by year end. Round 2 of the funding is expected to be much more, with estimates of $4.1 million being allocated to the district. There's little guidance available right now. There are several very broad categories that have been shared, but no concrete categories that we have seen with regard to the acceptable use of these funds. However, we anticipate being able to use them to reimburse for things such as classroom monitors and substitute teacher expenses, nursing staff and CNA salaries, additional staffing for summer school this year to allow for smaller class sizes to and accommodate in-person instruction, additional PPE needs, continued software costs for remote learning, and costs associated with one of our more buildings potentially being used as a vaccination site. While our spending will cross 2 fiscal years, we do anticipate that the complete level of reimbursement of this second round would be received next fiscal year. So tonight, as we get into our updated financial projection, I'm going to share 3 projection scenarios with you. The first one assumes an abatement of $2 million of the 2020 levy, which was recently passed by the board this past December. This scenario assumes that none of the land sale proceeds would be used on additional capital spending. The scenario was our recommendation to you during our levy presentation this past fall. The second scenario assumes no tax abatement, but instead assumes that we spend the entire land sale proceeds of $17.8 million on capital projects. And during the levy discussions, we heard you say that we would like to be able to provide additional property tax relief, and we also heard some of you mention that you would like to spend a portion of the land sale proceeds on capital projects that would benefit our students. We've therefore created a scenario to address both of these requests. Scenario 3 that's detailed here includes an abatement of $3 million or a reduction of the 2020 levy by that amount, and will use $5 million of the land sale proceeds for a to-be-determined capital project at the school. As we get into our projections, there are some assumptions that are made, and I want to just make sure that you have an understanding of those as we look at the 5-year forecast. We make assumptions on CPI for the upcoming year. We do know that 2021 is 1.4%. For the future outgoing years that are included in the projection, we use 2%, which again is our 5-year historical average. We do include the CARES Act funding of $4.1 million received next year. Have a slight decline in state aid in the short term. Have our student user fees waived as recommended for next school year. Expenses align with collective bargaining agreements and predicted trends, and that we would remain debt-free, utilizing our reserves to fund capital and life safety projects. So on this slide, I'm going to go through the results of each scenario, and what I'd like to focus on is the highlighted column on the far right, which represents where the fund balance percentages land at the end of the 5-year period. As a reminder, our fund balance policy requires us to stay about 33% in the educational fund and the operating funds combined. What you're going to see here is that our educational fund balance ends in the same place in all 3 scenarios. as all the variables are impacting the operations and maintenance fund, which is where we have received the land sale proceeds. In the first scenario, when we abate $2 million and don't spend any land sale proceeds on capital, the operating fund balance ends at 42.5%, declining from about 50% in 2021. The educational fund balance ends at 36.9%. Scenario 2, where there's no levy abatement, but capital proceeds are spent in their entirety from the land sale proceeds, we end with a fund balance of 40.5% in 2026. And again, note that our educational fund balance is the same as in the previous scenario because the proceeds are coming out of our operations and maintenance fund. After careful consideration, our recommendation as presented earlier this month is scenario number 3 with a $3 million abatement and additional capital spending of $5 million on projects to benefit our students in our schools. This permanent reduction to the levy provides the average homeowner with relief of approximately $35 over year, meaning that by year 6 we've provided over $19 million in tax relief through abatement, more than the amount of the land sale proceeds. In addition, the students and community would also benefit from the additional capital project work. In making this recommendation, we did not just look at these 3 scenarios, but looked at many renditions of various combinations. And this is the one that we present tonight, where we are able to balance the risk along with providing tax relief. This is the one that we feel comfortable with if the variables that I've discussed on prior slides, if there was a change, that we would be able to respond and remain in a favorable financial position to continue to sustain our district-wide goals. There are several variables in the forecasting model which can significantly impact the results that are not in our control. If you decide to pass a resolution to abate the 2020 tax levy, it's a permanent tax reduction to our levy base, and that does come with some level of risk, and I want to go through those considerations within our forecast. The first variable, again, that's outside of our control is the rate of CPI. The CPI is one of the largest drivers in our financial forecast model, as it drives the property tax revenue that we can receive year over year. As mentioned earlier, we use the average of the last 5 years in our projection model, which is 2%. And if you'll recall, we showed that if you look at the last 10 years, we've had several years with CPI under 2%. Those levels are not ancient history, and certainly a change in our assumption would have a change in our financial forecast. Under the category of state funding, as you know, Illinois did not pass the fair tax, and we are hearing from legislators that there is a great deal of discussion on how to balance the budget in other ways, and it's expected that there could be cuts either in the immediate year or future year to education in some way. We did receive word that the evidence-based funding will remain constant for next year, but there is still possibility of reduced funding in areas of prorated categoricals. There has been discussion of the shift of the TRS pension cost burden, and we've also accounted for slight reductions in our state funding within the model, but nothing as significant as the pension cost shift. That would have a much more significant impact on our projection. In the area of benefit costs, this is always an area that is difficult for us to predict. This year we are seeing lower than expected healthcare costs as people delay elective procedures, but we do expect that will increase as people continue to schedule those procedures down the road. We don't know what this looks like in the post-pandemic world, but do anticipate that we will start to pick up and see increases over the coming years. And finally, with regard to our property tax collections, regarding our collection rates as well as our refunds, we have been pleasantly surprised by our tax collection rates during the pandemic, and we do hope that trend will continue for us. Courts have been slow to process tax appeals during the pandemic, and we do fear that there could be a catch-up in refunds. We do know that 2019, what we're hearing is that there are record numbers of appeals that are being filed in the courts, and we would expect to see that and those refunds being applied to our or against our collections within the next few years. We did take all of these variables and risks into consideration when making our recommendation tonight, and ask that you will also just keep these in mind as we look into or discuss our scenarios and recommendation and the future of our district financially. This is one example of how a change in these variables can impact the financial model. As stated, we assumed that CPI in future years was 2%. But what if for the 2022 levy, CPI is actually 1%? All the other years, the assumption is correct, just that 1 year is different. Under scenario 3, our recommendation, the fund balance percent drops almost 3 percentage points to the number in the red circle. That's a big swing for us with just 1 year of CPI change. This is why we are not recommending an aggressive abatement scenario. We need to provide room for us to react to changes in our economy. And recall that our fund balance is not a goal for us for the policy, but it is a minimum. And if we do hit that minimum level, our policy does state that we need to have a plan to be able to increase our fund balance. Permanently reducing our tax levy through abatement has risks and rewards, and it's important to understand these before making this decision. On the plus side, an abatement provides permanent tax relief to our taxpayers. For every $1 million of tax abatement, the average homeowner will recognize approximately $12 a year in tax relief. This isn't just true in the year of the abatement, but it is true every single year into perpetuity. An abatement is also an easy to execute abatement with just the approval of the board resolution. But however, on the flip side, an abatement does mean that it would be less tax revenue for the districts, less money for education, operations, and for capital projects. It's also less money available in the event that we would need to respond to state mandates or economic issues. An abatement will decline our fund balance, and as I mentioned earlier, 33% is our minimum threshold. While it's easy to execute this abatement, it is challenging and expensive to do the opposite, which would be raising taxes above the PTEL limit should it be necessary. And finally, should too much money be abated, the financial stability of the district could be compromised. In December, the board passed the 2020 levy at the estimated full amount allowed under the property tax extension limitation law of $241.7 million, which is an increase of 2.7% over the prior year. After reducing the levy by the $3 million abatement, the levy increase drops to 1.45%. If you'll recall, a portion of this increase is attributed to new property growth and TIF expiration. So the expectation is that after the abatement, the average increase to taxpayers would be about 1%, about half the increase without the abatement. Earlier in the presentation, I discussed the intentional decline in fund balance levels that have been achieved through levy abatement, facility improvement projects, and reducing our pension liabilities. The green line in this chart represents our current fiscal year, where you will see an increase in fund balance. This increase is due primarily to receipt of the land sale proceeds of $17.8 million using the scenarios that were just described. Should the board proceed with the abatement to the 2020 levy, the amount of $3 million, the fund and fund additional capital initiatives, the long-range projection demonstrates a continued slow decline in fund balance over the next 5 years, while still maintaining levels that exceed the minimum fund balance levels that are outlined for policy. Fund balance for the operating funds reflects the total available fund balance from all of the district's accounting funds. The slight fund balance buffer above the minimum threshold allows the district to continue providing the same level of services while also leaving us with the ability to respond to unforeseen events that could result in the fund balance falling below the minimum threshold. The district continues to make facility improvement projects across our schools and funds these projects through its annual operating budget. Several additional projects have been outlined in 3 categories of improvements, including our major capital projects, life safety projects, and our routine maintenance projects. The scenario that was recommended this evening includes a recommendation to use $5 million toward additional capital initiatives. While those projects are not reflected in the chart here, it is estimated that they would be scheduled as early as summer 2023. The district has gathered information on possible improvements and associated costs, including projects such as updates in our auditoriums, as well as other school-based priorities. These projects will be reviewed in greater detail with our facilities committee meeting next week. So what is the impact of the levy abatement recommendation on the district? The recommendation to abate the 2020 levy by $3 million that was presented allows the district to obtain balance between sustaining quality instructional programming in our schools for years to come, preserves our financial stability, and allows ongoing upkeep and improvements within our facilities, including an additional $5 million in facility projects, and provides tax relief to our community. Following approval of the levy in December, it was filed with the county. The county does allow us to file an abatement as late as the end of March. On tonight's agenda, you have a recommendation to approve a resolution setting forth the amount of the recommended levy abatement in the amount of $3 million. And this levy abatement, should it be approved, would impact the taxpayers on the tax bill that would be issued this coming August. If there are any questions available or from anyone, I'm happy to answer those. And I believe that we also have Barb Peterson on Zoom with us as well.
Thank you, Lauren. In the fall, when we began the levy discussion, we were asked to bring forth a recommendation for tax relief to the taxpayers via an abatement. My special thanks to Lauren and Barb, who have given you the details of the risk and the rewards for this. As this board is very well aware, our financial decisions are not risk-free, and the recommendation tonight does have some risk that has been presented to you. It is the maximum amount, if this board is going to consider an abatement, that I would ever put forward to you because of the risk connected to it. If future changes do come in, the variables that were presented to you tonight included the CPI change, any change in state funding, any change in benefit costs, or any change in our property tax collection or refunds. The current board at that time will have to make adjustments to what is going on within our district and our financial status of that current year, as well as future predictions. The future adjustments tonight, as presented to you, I think have been clearly laid out in terms of the risk involved. The abatement would certainly bring relief to the taxpayer at an amount of $35 for a approximately $350,000 house, and would use up the amount of the land sale in terms of the abatement as year after year as presented in one of the slides to you.
I have just a couple of questions. For slide number 11, I'm curious how you are projecting the $4.1 million. How did you arrive at that figure for the projected second round of funding?
Sure. The Illinois State Board of Education did release their latest calculations, and that is the number that was provided by them.
Okay, thank you. And then for slide 13.
I'm sorry, did you say 13?
13, yes, sorry. I'll try and speak up a little bit here. How does the operating fund balance end at 42.5% under scenario 1 with the $2 million abatement, and then slightly lower at 40.5% under scenario 2 where there's no abatement?
Yeah, so in scenario 1, the $2 million $2 million abatement would utilize the land sale proceeds, and over a period of approximately 9 years, we would get to the same point as we are with spending the $17.8 million in a shortened window of time. So really, it's just that we are accounting for the full $17.8 million within that financial, or that 5-year outlook.
Okay.
And it would just take a little bit longer to get to that point under scenario 1.
Okay, thank you. Then I just have a follow-up question. How was it determined in this projection to allocate that money over 9 years? You know, how was it decided upon 9 years as opposed to less or more?
It's really just the $2 million year over year. So there is a slight compounding effect to that. But even once it hits with any abatement recommendation or scenario, once it hits the 17.8, it will continue beyond that.
Yes, of course. Yes,
and then the $17.8 million. So
thank you.
Concluded after that.
I have 2 questions, if I may. If it wasn't for the land sale, the $17 million, would we be looking at an abatement?
We would not be recommending abatement if we did not have the $17.8 million of revenue.
Okay, thank you. And the second question that I have are tax payments, because the tax bills have come out, but taxpayers don't have to pay that until May 1st, I believe it is. How do you foresee that impacting the district possibly?
Yeah, so the tax bills that were just released are calculated based on last year's levy amount. They will be adjusted by the current year levy, which could include an abatement on the August or the fall tax bills. And based on the $3 million abatement scenario, it is about a $36 reduction, but it's a year-over-year reduction for the average homeowner within our district.
Because I know that, well, it means we'll probably get the money delayed to us, since it's going to be paid to the state later.
Yes, if there is still the delay in the due date of the property taxes without penalty to the taxpayer, and right. Yes, we would still anticipate that we will have later collections on that revenue than we typically would. However, we will make up for that loss. So our fund balance would be able to carry us through that period when we don't have those collections for that 60 days.
So it's helpful for us to have that fund balance because with the delayed payments?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments?
I really appreciate the thoroughness of this presentation, so thank you for your time and for putting this together. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that will bring us to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda.
Can I make a motion to remove item G from the consent agenda?
Sure.
Sorry for the short notice.
Yeah.
Typically I'd bring it to you before, but I caught something.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So we'll just pull that. So the motion will be the approval with the consent agenda with the removal of item G, and then we'll address item G second. So the suggested motion is the consent agenda without item G be approved as presented. Would someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye. Okay, now the second motion is the approval of item G, resolutions authorizing intervention in proceedings before the State Property Tax Appeal Board. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Okay. The item for docket 19-49084 for Harvest Plaza is only seeking a reduction of $82,376. That doesn't meet this board's threshold for filing this. I either recommend we remove it or we vote it down.
Do we want to get some explanation about?
Is there a do you have a page that you're referencing on that?
Yeah,
appeal?
I do. I think there's 44 pages on that, and it would be, I think it's going to be page 19.
Thank you.
For Harvest Plaza.
There's a Harvest Plaza on page 13. What was the docket number?
The docket number I had was 19-49084.
It is page 19.
Yes, I believe that this one does have.
Yeah, I'm looking at the sheet stamped May 26, 2020.
May 26th or May 21st?
May 26.
It was postmarked May 21st, received May 26th.
Ah, I see. Yeah, in the upper left corner versus the lower portion.
21st.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So based on that financial number, it doesn't meet our threshold.
There's a second page of that has additional pin that's listed, which the two are combined for the property.
I'm sorry, I don't see where we would be voting on that second PIN number. We're only voting on the docket number, right?
Well, the docket number includes the two pins. So the second page where there's the total of $357,781 for the Board of Review and the appellant claim of $276,705, those two are combined.
I'm still not following where the pins are listed under the docket, because I see a different PIN number on that page, and I don't see a second PIN listed.
Yeah,
Where we would combine that.
the docket number on page 19 of the PDF
Okay.
continues. Page 20 of the PDF is a part of that same record.
I see a different PIN number on the docket versus what you're referencing for the petition. I don't have any way of knowing that these two forms will be tied together.
When we receive it, it's a two-sided document that comes and they are
right.
combined
And I
together.
can't, all we're presented with, if I'm looking at the docket number, there's a single PIN number, and that's not the same PIN number on the addendum to the petition.
The page that
I look at on page 20 has a different PIN than the, different parcel number than what's listed on page 19.
yes, there are multiple parcels, and when there's more than the one that's listed under 2C, they continue them onto the next page. It's part of the entire record that is sent to us from the county.
So are we voting on we're voting on the docket for the PIN. I guess the way it's listed, we would be appealing the property at...
Yeah, we do not complete this form. This is a form that is sent to us as a notice. So when they're not including the docket on the second page, that's just the way the form is completed and sent to us.
And still, the total number listed on the addendum is also under 100,000.
It's a combination of the two. The two pins fall under the one docket.
So we're not fighting individual properties. We're aggregating them, correct?
Correct. It's not uncommon for there to be multiple pins on a individual property.
But I thought we were only looking for variations to individual properties of 100,000.
This is one property that has multiple pins. The combined pins are for the total, the property in total.
Okay. I need no further explanation.
Thank you. That's not our choice to aggregate these things.
It is
They
not.
file that
No,
way.
this is just the way it's filed, correct.
And we intervene if it meets the criteria.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions here?
Yes, sorry, point of order, the mic is not working. Can you hear me ambiently and enough to record?
I can.
Yeah, I can.
But let's get it.
He's asking about recording.
Oh, sure.
Oh, there we go.
Continue.
Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Do you want to test it?
Miss Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Nay.
Mrs. Klinkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye. All right, that'll bring us to special reports. First, we have Freedom of Information Act requests. Any questions or comments here?
Dr. Small, how are we doing with our Freedom of Information Act requests? Are we getting, do we have enough manpower to meet the demand?
Ms. Hummel is our Freedom of Information Act officer, so all the information comes through her office, and then depending on what information that is needed, that then gets sent out to different administrators to gather the information and to bring it back to her office so it can be processed in a timely manner as required by the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay.
All right, next item is class size committee report. Any questions or comments here? And our next item is the 2020-2021 school year update. Dr. Small?
During the second semester, approximately 49% of our families selected in-person learning and 51% selected remote learning. This selection process does not prevent families from attending school in-person daily, as in-person daily is available right now for any student. At the beginning of February, we invited students to attend school in person regardless of their attendance cohort assignment. And we have seen a slight increase at our highest of 50% in our students attending in person. Daily in-person learning is available to any student who wishes, as we are not at our capacity. We range from 30 to 50% of our capacity on any given day, with up to 70% at our capacity at one of our academies. Our principals are reporting that some students that have never previously attended in person have come to the building and are interested in continuing to learn in person. What we have heard is there are a number of factors that are inhibiting students from returning to in-person learning, including success at remote learning, caring for younger siblings who are also remote learning, the family decision to remain as to whether they consider being at school or at home a safer environment. We are actively seeking ways to invite and get more students into our buildings and remove any actual or perceived barriers that are impacting our students' choice to come into our schools for learning. In the world of spring testing, the ISBE has formally asked for a waiver of required testing from the federal government. This waiver will have the most significant effect on our current juniors or seniors who are required to participate in the SAT in order to earn a high school diploma. The use of SAT for college admissions has been a common discussion among universities prior to the pandemic and continues, as more than half of our colleges are currently not requiring an ACT or SAT, making it optional for fall 2022 applicants. In March, we will begin the finalization for the planning of our spring-April testing, which will include the junior science assessment, the junior SAT, the senior SAT for those who have not taken it yet, the freshman PSAT 9, and the sophomore PSAT 10. These tests will require a large number of the students to come in, and we do need the information from the ISBE so that we can tell our parents whether these tests are required for in-person attendance or not. In cooperation with Districts 15 and 54, District 211 has the capacity to conduct large-scale vaccinations at one or possibly two of our high schools. Our priority is trying to find a way to offer as many vaccinations to our staff as we can. This capacity and desire to be a vaccination site has been shared with the Cook County Department of Health, the Region Superintendent of Schools, and local health care providers who may have inconsistent access to vaccines but are willing to give it to our school employees. Just this evening before I came to our meeting, the Regional Superintendent of Schools called me to say that our tour had been successful with our MABIF's connection with our local fire departments and Cook County in terms of being a vaccination site at Palatine High School. Though that is good news, there is no indication nor promise of when we would open or when vaccines would be available. So at this time, we continue to offer to our employees the ability to get vaccinated through either a Cook County link or their own local link, depending on where they live, including leaving during the school day to make that happen. In the world of athletics and activities, our winter sports have continued, as well as contact days for our spring sports, and our activities are kicking up in all available ways, including any type of in-person operations that we can do for our competitions and our events. The limited spectators have forced us to continue to be creative with our ticketing and our live streaming in order to offer the opportunity for not only our students but also our parents to watch their children compete and perform in events. Our students with incomplete grades from second semester are progressing towards credit completion and have seen success in their current second semester grades with the success. Each school has unique outreach depending on the needs of their school, including outreach directly to parents, outreach in terms of inviting students directly in, and making sure that once they are in, they have one-on-one connections to either teachers or faculty members who are able to help them. In the Those Who Excel Award tonight, the last award winner that I presented, even though he was not here, I wanted to read his accolades because he would be one of the people who do connect to our students through guided study hall as well as unique study hall positions, so that when our students come in and they have that afternoon academic time or time during their day when we want to connect to them, we have certain spots that we bring them where there's a trusted adult who works with them. Schools are currently finalizing their options for senior events, balancing the need for participation, venue availability, and hopefully potential changes in mitigations that will loosen up by the time we get into May.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Small? Okay, that will bring us...
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure, please.
Give me a minute. Thank you. How are we handling test prep? So, you know, I know we're in this weird place of wondering what's going to happen with tests. It seems like whatever's going to happen last minute. So I'm sure, you know, we're preparing to go ahead because we have to prepare. So then what, you know, how are we handling test prep for our kids who are coming in person and our kids who are learning remotely?
So test prep can happen after school or during a particular class, depending on what tests they're prepping for. So certainly if there's test prep that's going on within a particular class, whether it be an English class, a math class, or a potential advanced placement class, that certainly would happen during the school day and then scheduled as potential homework or whatever the teacher is designing for it afterwards. In terms of the specialization of, for example, the junior science assessment, that would be something that would be taking place in preparation of any of the students who are juniors who are currently sitting in the science class. The majority of our juniors do, but it's not necessarily 100% of them. In terms of the other standardized tests with the PSAT 9 and 10, as well as the SAT, those can happen in terms of within the English or mathematics class, as well as outside. We have multiple arenas for a student to be involved in the test prep, whether it be our after school or before school sessions that happen with the test coordinators, which is a position that is hired for across the schools, or as I said, within the actual classes. And I don't know if Mr. Schumacher has anything additional to add in the test prep world.
You did a great job of covering it.
So I have a follow-up question for that. You know, I know that there are students who are learning at home and they're watching their younger siblings in the morning, you know, who are home. And then some of those students have taken on extra hours or gotten employment to help with their family's overall financial situation that, you know, they'd be working after school. And so their availability, some students' availability would be highly variable as compared to maybe previous years. So, you know, what are we doing to make sure that students whose availability is highly variable because of their, you know, uncontrollable circumstances for them are still getting access to the same kind of test prep that other students who have more availability are currently receiving?
Sure, I can handle that one. Through our student services department, our students have a college board account, and that college board account is linked to the Khan Academy preparation programs. And so that's an option that's available to everyone, and it's available any time of the day. And so it's not bound by having an afternoon academic support session or a particular class or being able to attend a session. And so that is an option that counselors talk to students about. That's also an option that in particular classes is, I'm going to use the term assigned to students, but they have work that their teachers recommend that they work through in different phases and opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm familiar with that, the resource that you're talking about. I just want to make sure that those students who might not be available for these regularly offered sessions still have a one-on-one connection with a staff person, that they can rely on to call upon when they're trying to navigate this. Let's say at 11:30 at night, when that's the only time they have available to sit in front of a computer and try and figure out how to get a good score on the SAT. So that's just a concern that I have, and I want to make sure that that's forefront, when we're offering our services to our kids in these really weird circumstances.
Could you speak into the microphone a little better? It's kind of hard when you're pointed his way.
So
Thank you.
I was saying that I'm concerned that our students are in a bunch of complicated scenarios, and I want to make sure that we're still offering a one-on-one connection with a trusted staff person or someone that they can rely on as they're trying to navigate their test prep at, for example, 11:30 at night when they're using the resources that are available to anybody at any time. If they have an issue, and that's the only time that they have available to study for a test, and I want to make sure that the next day when they log into school, they have an adult that they can talk to about prepping for the test, so they're just not left kind of on their own trying to figure it out with the free resources, that they have a connection with somebody on our staff to make sure that they're prepared.
Is there something available systemically that's not more, customized? I mean, is that a possibility to do something outside of traditional hours? I would claim that I'm familiar with instances that are out of the norm, that students are addressed outside of normal hours, but systemically I'm not aware of that.
Sure, so the most customized option would be the Khan Academy, in which students take a pre-assessment, and then the practices that are assigned to them are based on their actual score on the pre-assessment. And so that's very tailored and individualized and can be done anywhere. But I would also say that I would echo what Dr. Small said, particularly in junior level classes, there is a focus on the preparation for those standardized tests that take place during the junior year. And so those individual teachers are working on strategies and are embedding strategies in the instructional work that the students are doing.
That makes me feel better, and I'm really pleased to hear that. And then my other question is, I want to follow up with a comment that one young person was kind enough to make at public comments. I want to make sure that I'm understanding the situation right. I've been very pleased and proud that our district is providing meals to any student who needs food, no questions asked. Are we also providing them a safe place to eat that food, on campus?
Students do have the ability to eat in some of our designated areas for what I'll call kind of the larger gatherings, where we have spaces for 50 for breakfast. If they are staying for the afternoon sessions, they have the same ability to eat their lunch in those locations. I will say that the vast majority are taking their lunch with them. It's kind of a grab and go option as they walk out the door.
Sure. So we're not saying to students, here's your breakfast, now you have to take it outside and eat it and then come back in. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's not something that we're doing, right?
No, there are designated locations within the school.
We'll double check and make sure that students understand that there are designated places for them to.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Just a quick question. With regard to return to the traditional education that you referenced in the update, is that simply for having 100% of the students in class, or would that be for going back to a full day of classes? And is there anything prohibiting us from having our 8 class periods in a day in the hybrid scenario?
So the traditional scenario that is presented is a traditional school day with 8 periods, and the students are in attendance. So we need them in their cafeterias, their gyms, and their lunchrooms, or their study halls in order to make that operation happen. So is there anything from preventing us from going to an 8-period day from a AB schedule? There is not, except for the change that will happen to our students in terms of how they're set up for their coursework, and then the teacher planning has to change.
So we would have an abrupt change if we were to go into phase 5 versus having a stepped transition, which could occur with an 8-period day under hybrid and then into a full period. So we would have to overcome.
Abrupt transition is phase 5.
Well, if tomorrow we were free and ISB and all of the health guidelines said you're free to return to traditional education, that would be an abrupt change. It would be the same situation. It'd be the same impact, jarring impact that you're describing if we went to an 8-period day under hybrid.
And it would be especially if in phase 5 they said that all students were to return to school and parents did not have a choice. So we would have to transition that.
And how long would that transition plan take for the district? Is it something we could turn on a dime and do, or are we talking this would be something that to change these schedules to accommodate it, we're looking at several weeks?
Are we requiring all students to attend in person, or do they still have the option? I mean, if that makes a difference in how we transition.
If we were to go to traditional learning as described in the update, which you said would be no restrictions on social distancing, and we would be required to have all of our students in our school buildings, as you've said, under that condition.
So they do not have the option to remain home.
That would be my impression of how we would interpret that.
So the question is, how long does that take to transition? That would probably take at least a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. If I understood correctly, one of our speakers had a question about test prep, about it being equal at all the schools. Is that something that we can check into just to make certain
Mr.
that...
Schumacher, can you address that one?
Sure, I'm happy to look into that a little bit more. What I can tell you at this point is that each school has really a tailored program that's based on the adults that oversee it, and also it's based on the success of past programs as far as when they offer it, how many sessions they offer, the structured curriculum and components of each of them. And so they've really tailored it to the student body at that school and what has been successful in the past.
Maybe adding on to what Ms. Cavill had said, the question, are we letting the students know that those things are available to them? And is there any opportunity for something a little bit different, as was brought up earlier? So there is an opportunity for that, but are we letting the students know?
Yes, and I think there's always an opportunity for improvement, certainly.
Okay. Okay. And the second question that I have is, believe it or not, I mean, we're at the end, almost at the end of February, and when you look at it, you've got school for March and April and maybe half of May. When will we start looking at, what we're going to do for graduation? And as was asked also about, activities for the end of the year.
That's currently already being discussed.
Okay. When would we know, are we looking at maybe a couple of weeks down, sometime in March then?
Well, Mr. Schumacher just had a 3 o'clock meeting, I believe, today, didn't you?
We have been...
Timeline for us?
Well, the organizations that...
Or no, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, the organizations that we're working with want the timeline to be 2 weeks ago. They want us to commit to them, but these are big events, and we understand the importance of these events, and so there's a large stakeholder group that we're working with to make the decisions. And so while I would have loved to already make the decision and lock it in, there's a lot of pieces and opinions that are coming in, and so we're trying to make sure that we're taking the student's perspective and making the best decision that we can with their experience in mind. And so certainly we continue to discuss, and we'll have a large group together tomorrow to look at all the options that we have. But it's on our minds, and certainly we're having the discussions to try to make it the best experience we can within the environment that we have.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments and questions. One is that someone we heard from this evening is involved with the PTA, the VIPs at Schaumburg, and the involvement at the school level of trying to make some of these arrangements. So my question to you, Josh, is, Mrs. Schumacher, is the involvement that you are doing at the district level, are there parent groups, are there student groups at the school level that are already involved or are planned to be involved? And I think it's extremely important that whatever is decided is communicated as soon as possible to our school community.
Thank you for that. Certainly, each principal has been in contact with their parent groups regarding connecting a potential prom event with a potential post-prom event and how that would look. And so that's done a little bit differently at each school. As far as the students, each school has or is in the process of directly speaking with their students in a focus group style atmosphere. And that's really what I was mentioning to Ms. Klimkowitz when I said we want to make sure the students' voice is in the planning and that we are providing an event and a structure that they actually want and that they'll actually attend. So we think that's very important.
Thank you. And my other is to follow up regarding test prep and the comment that was made regarding your response regarding the equity of tests from school to school and how each one's maybe a little bit different and the personality of the school and history of the school. My question is, from the data that was shared with us this evening, there's appears to be some pretty obvious differences between the amount of time that is available to students in different schools. If there is a school, my question is, if there's a student at one school who may not have the same level of test prep available to them as at another school within our same district, is that something that's available to them to take advantage of? Because maybe they have individual needs that are different than what the school is presenting to them.
So the direct answer to the question is we historically have not done that. Historically, schools have, or students have attended the sessions at their home school. To your other point about the equality of sessions being offered or time, that's certainly something I can look deeper into and have conversations within the schools. And I had written a little note earlier in the question section about regathering together the sponsors from each school to share ideas and schedules and all of those pieces to really get a look at what are the best practices and what's working and what's not. So certainly.
Thank you. And I'd also like to encourage analysis of the amount of time available for test prep compared to the results of tests in those schools and any correlation that there may be in regards to that as well.
Certainly.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions here, next item on our agenda is the District 211 Equity Team update.
Mr. Lefevre, could we have a short recess? Like a 5-minute break?
Sure, if nobody's opposed to that, we'll...
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, we'll recess for 5 minutes. Is anyone opposed to that?
No.
No one opposed to that?
No.
Okay, we'll return, it's 9:40, we'll return at 9:45. All right, if we want to come back to order, we'll continue with the next item on our our agenda, which is the District 211 Equity Team Update. Dr. Small.
We are in the middle of our focus group phase, as indicated within this update. We are on track for bringing it to the spring. Our recommendation is that we will up to that point many work as well as the focus group responses.
Any questions?
Not a question, but a comment. Well, I do have a question. The subgroups that are going to be interviewed, what about the teachers? When will we do the teachers?
Sure, I can take that one. When we originally presented the plan back in December, there were two phases. Phase one, we're currently in right now, and that is the students and the parents. And then phase two would be the teachers. And what we had presented at the time was that the parent and student feedback we wanted to gain immediately to put into the plan. The plan would then be presented, and after the plan is presented, then we would do the teachers, gaining their feedback both on their experience and the reflections on the plan as it moves forward to be implemented, because they're the main ones who are going to then be implementing the plan. So that happens likely in July.
Okay. And I think that's an important fact that you just presented, and maybe people don't fully understand why the teachers would be, later on in the course of doing this.
Yes, it was a strategic decision from the start to put them at that time, and it was made in consultation with BD and Associates.
Okay. The other thing that I have, if I may, one of the young ladies that was here speaking, Miss Faith Massey, she's on the equity team that I'm with. So I've had the pleasure of working with her, and she's an amazing young lady, and she spoke very eloquently and had very good information. So I think that's really important. We're getting good information from our students who are participating in the equity team. So I just wanted to recognize her. I know she just left a little while ago.
Okay, next item is the 2021-2022 financial calendar, including budget and levy sequence. Any questions or comments here?
Just as a reminder, this is a year-long process. We move from one section of this into another.
Okay, that will bring us to unfinished business, and our first item here is the 2021-2022 student user fees and 2022 summer school fees. We have two suggested motions. The first motion is that the 2021-2022 school year, the student textbook instructional supply fee of $170 be waived for all students. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Abstain.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Creamer?
Aye.
Mrs. Klunkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. And our second suggested motion is that for the 2021-2022 school year, the driver education behind the wheel fee remain at $400 for the regular school year. The student parking user fee remain at $75 per semester. The under 1.5 mile transportation fee remain at $200 per year. That the late registration fee for transportation remain at $35. And that the late fee be imposed on registration payments received after July 1, 2021. The price of a standard school breakfast be set at $1.65 for students, and that the reduced price standard school breakfast remain at 30 cents for students. That lunch price be set at $2.55, $2.85, and $3.10, including milk for students, and that reduced price standard school lunch remain at 40 cents, including milk for students, and that all other 2022 summer school fees remain unchanged as presented. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes. Can you tie together the items that are in part 2 of the second motion to an earlier slide was about the levy that showed $3.2 million in student fees? I don't, if there's just so many numbers here. I see one that says $3.2 million and this one is not total. So I don't know what the totals are and what the subtotals are for each category in motion number 2.
There was a, well, let me pull up that slide, otherwise.
And the 3.2 was summer school and next year. Most of it being in 2021 or 2022.
In reference to the 3.2, but there's in the December agenda, there was a fee report that provided a great deal of information on the individual fee and the history and the revenue.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I should have. It's slide number 8 in the presentation, unless you renumbered some of them.
And Mr. Chairman, can you repeat the question again? I don't think
Okay, in motion number 2, okay, there are a bunch of line items with no totals. Okay, and I don't know how that comes up to be a total of around $3 million.
Yeah, so in a typical year, if all fees are assessed, our fee revenue is about $4.6 million for the categories that are listed on this slide. There is, on the top half of the chart there is the regular school year. You can see that comes down to about 2.4, the item that's highlighted in blue. And that's because we are recommending the waiver of the fees in 1.357 million. So that's the amount that would be waived through the $170 registration fee. The bottom section there is the remainder for summer school, which is inclusive. It's just under $1 million there with regard to, it would be a combination of the two sections, the regular and the school year.
Okay, thank you.
So the 3.2 again is just, that would be the total fee revenue with the 1.4 waived.
And that total, that 3.2 is the entire top half and the
It is. It's the total revenue that would be budgeted for next year for those particular categories.
Do we make any money off of lunches?
The federal meal programs are a break-even program. So the way that the fees are set is by doing an analysis of your food cost, your labor cost, supplies, and your reimbursement, and it is essentially a break-even program. There are other items in the national or in the food service program that are have a different fee pricing structure, but they would be the a la carte items.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Abstain.
Mrs. Klunkowitz? Aye. Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. Next we have Education Framework Service. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approve the subscription to the Education Framework Service at a cost of $28,321.50 per year with a one-year agreement. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. If there's no discussion, I would like to make a motion to amend this. And I would amend this motion by replacing the $28,321.50 per year with the number $24,776.50. And the 1-year agreement would be replaced with the 3-year agreement. Is there a second for that amendment?
I second.
So the discussion here, the reason is we have the amendment, which is simply the motion that we addressed at the last board meeting when we did not necessarily have comparative information to what a 1-year deal would look like versus a 3-year deal. There's a savings of $3,545 per year going with the 3-year deal.
I would counter that argument with the fact that we don't have a justification to exceed beyond 1 year, as the contract is just to bring our electronic security up with current law.
This would be, but I'm assuming that just because we use technology in 1 year, that doesn't mean it's going to be the same going forward for 3 years. I'm assuming, especially in a district our size, that it wouldn't be unusual to add new software, somewhere in each year that would have to then be evaluated. Am I making a correct assumption about that, Dr. Small? If
Yes.
Okay.
When I first looked at this, I thought, if my house was out of code with electricity, right? My fuse box wasn't up to code, and I hired a service to come into my house, get my house up to code, I'm good to go. I don't need them to keep coming back year after year because I'm to code. But to Mrs. Cappell's point, we're continuing to add, update, and change our technology. So with that in mind, the service would be to make sure that we maintain that level of adherence to the requirements as a school district as we continue to change, add, and modify, so to speak, our technology as a school district, and as new technology comes out, to make sure that we're staying up to date. So I think continual service to make sure that as we change, that we're staying to code, so to speak, going forward.
So this is just an evaluation of our existing software for compliance with the current state law. I don't know why the district would purchase something in the future that doesn't meet current standard laws. I mean, you're basically saying we would ignorantly purchase software in a procurement mechanism that did not meet state law, pay somebody to tell us it didn't meet state law, and then have to go about and fix it. That doesn't seem like being good stewards with our taxpayer dollars, if you ask me.
That argument doesn't work for me because that has an implicit assumption that we're only using software that's essentially made in Illinois. I mean, that has an inbuilt awareness, and that's just not the way software works. So, I can theoretically understand the point being made. I disagree with it simply because we're not talking about. I'd be more persuaded were we talking about meeting federal standards that all 50 states were required to meet, but that's not what we're talking about. This is in response to state law.
Right, and we're aware of that state law, which is why we're hiring this firm to evaluate our existing software. But moving forward, we can't plead ignorance and purchase things that doesn't comply. I mean, we would ask the vendor that is selling us that product, does this comply with this statute of state law? And it's on them to say yes or no. I don't understand why we would hire a third party to tell us that.
Software, your phone updates its apps every day. And every time there's an update, you need to know that everything is still in compliance.
Look, especially because I'm sorry, that, this is to do with student privacy. And to me, that's very compelling. We're not just looking at compliance with some sort of, support for a state issue that has no real impact. The state has passed those kind of silly unfunded mandates before. This is not one of those for me because it has to do with student privacy data, which I think is really important. And I would feel more secure knowing that we have a service that is looking, especially in a district as large as ours, that is making sure that our student privacy data is essentially protected. With all the moving pieces that a district of our size must have to use. It's just how I feel about it.
You're basically, with a 3-year deal, buying an extended warranty on the services that are being provided in the first year. Whether or not they are going to be provided in year 2 or year 3. There is limited risk in buying the service for 1 year, and then if it breaks, you got to replace it. We get confused, whatever. You buy it again for the second year for $3,000 more. I mean, that's a rounding error within this district. It just doesn't, you're buying a very, very, very expensive warranty at 3 times the cost of the product.
And again, my phone, when it downloads an app, I have the choice to download it or not. It's not like it's happening and I'm completely ignorant to it. I don't know how that operates with your experience using your phone, but to suggest that we would have software that, we're bringing into the district unsecure, it doesn't sound like we should have a lot of faith in our IT department if we have to get this outsourced. Honestly, in most contracts, when you put it out for bid or you do an evaluation, data security is at the forefront. I mean, we've experienced breaches with recently, with what we have for our information distribution systems. So, these things are something that we should be requiring that it meets the SOPA before we even decide to purchase it. It shouldn't be something where we're going to purchase something, force it into the district, have this firm identify it as not secure, and then react. That's not a good process.
Can you give us a summary of the process behind this and why we're purchasing it?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Small. I think it's important to make note that the requirements of SOPA are complex and extend well beyond purchase software, but it extends to the use of technology tools of any kind, including online subscriptions to many types of portals that over the years our teachers have identified and implemented within their classroom practices, much like you or I as consumers go on to commercial sites where we are required to establish an account at no cost. But we don't always know what happens with the information that we put into that portal. And it's those types of instances that, as an example, the Education Framework Service will help us to stay compliant with the requirements of SOPA and protect the privacy of our students' information and data. I think the example of the apps updating is a pertinent one because I can speak from personal experience that the language of a user agreement is not always easy to understand, even for the experts in our technology department. And to ensure that a change that occurs at a moment in time does not disqualify or does disqualify a particular product from being compliant is important. Our protection of student data and information is heightened to higher levels every day. We know that is an important facet of what we do with the information that we have, and we strive to teach our students the value of knowing and understanding the importance of protecting their online identities. And it's a task that, without this service, we will have great difficulty maintaining. I would agree with Mr. Dombrowski's assertion that the first year is probably the most complex, because that is going back and inventorying and examining a lot of existing pieces and understanding where we are. And as we move forward, while the volume may not be as great, the importance and the value and the need will not be diminished, because we are continually identifying new tools and new ways of engaging our students with online resources. Another service that is provided by Education Framework is the automated posting of the required information that we have to put on our websites. Freeing our web team from that task and knowing that it is done right and properly is an efficiency that is, I can't attach a specific figure to it, but it certainly adds great value to our team in terms of the ability for them to attend to the tasks that they are accustomed to while maintaining our compliance and so forth.
I have a question. What kind of contact does Education Framework have with our staff? Will it be once a week, once a month? Do we have any idea what that is? What kind of contact they'll have with us?
As described in the report here, we have unlimited access to them through their database and to their improvement portal. I don't know that we have a dedicated account manager. I couldn't state that to you this evening.
Any other questions? So the motion we're voting on is the amendment only. This is just for the amendment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Creamer?
No.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. So the amendment passes. So now the motion before the board is that the Board of Education approve the subscription to the Education Framework Service at a cost of $24,776.50 per year with a 3-year agreement. Can someone please, that motion is before the board. So discussion on that motion now. Roll call, please.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Creamer?
No.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. All right, that motion carries.
I think I was forgotten.
I was just counting, so Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kovac. Thank you for your work on that matter. Next section of business is new business. The first item here, we have a resolution abating a portion of the taxes levied for the 2020 tax year. We have two suggested motions. The first motion is that the Board of Education approve the resolution abating a portion of the taxes levied for the 2020 tax year in the Operations and Maintenance Fund in an amount of $3 million for a final 2020 levy amount of $238,690,000 as presented. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I'd like to make a comment. Our community is significantly impacted economically by the pandemic in many ways, including unemployment, additional expenses, less revenues, business closures, greater uncertainty, and less family income. As we learned in this evening's earlier long-term financial planning presentation, these are impacting our district finances as well. So far this year, revenues appear to be lower, expenses are in some ways less, and in others are greater, and overall finances are less predictable. We have and continue to make changes to our fees to help our students and their families with the affordability of attending our schools under these economically challenging times. The question we are facing with this resolution is how we can, as a school board and district, maintain or continue to improve our education and activity programs for our students, while considering the continued costs of them and reducing the tax burden on the property owners in our community. As a member of the community and property taxpayer myself, and hearing from many others across our community regarding the high level of taxes for which we are responsible, we have a sworn duty to be fiscally responsible, and I am all for reducing the financial burden our district has on our community. It is important that when seeking ways we can do this in District 211, we must also consider the long-term impact our actions take on the district and our goals and mission. In looking at the impact of a tax abatement on the long-term balance of funds we have available for our educational programs, staff, facilities, maintenance, and fund balance, I am concerned that an abatement will cause us to reach a level of funding that will eventually require us to either ask for a referendum of additional money from the taxpayers that could be significantly higher than they would otherwise experience, or return to debt through issuance of bonds that will cost the district even more. During an Illinois Association of School Boards program I attended this morning, a lawyer described the tax abatement as the gift that keeps on giving. It keeps on giving positively to the taxpayers in the community, and it keeps on taking possible funds and money from the district. A rebate, on the other hand, is a way for our district to give money back to the property taxpayer without negatively impacting the levy now and going forward. I know another school district in the area is providing rebates to approximately 30,000 property taxpayers. I realize the burden of our district taking it upon ourselves to do this for approximately 80,000 property taxpayers. This would include identifying each property tax owner, calculating their portion of the overall rebate, cutting checks, and sending them out to the community. I also understand the concerns of potential liability and complications associated with receiving dependable and accurate information from the county, homeowner changes, and responding to taxpayer inquiries about their specific rebates. This would be a daunting task to undertake by our already very busy staff. I get that. The passage of an abatement decision by this board must be made and submitted to Cook County by the last day of March in order to be realized on property tax bills this year. I would like to make a motion that we postpone the suggested motion 1 to abate a portion of the taxes levied for the 2020 tax year in the Operations and Maintenance Fund in an amount of $3 million until next month's board meeting on Thursday, March 18th. Should we decide to pass it that evening, there would still be ample time for the filing with the county. In the meantime, rather than vote on suggested motion 1 tonight, I would like to request that the district administration investigate possible external services we can consider to handle the rebating of money from our district surplus to the community and report back to the board their findings in advance of the next board meeting. Such a service should include the identification of property tax owners as of a designated date, calculating their portion of the overall rebate, cutting checks, and sending them out to the community on behalf of our district within a certain amount of time. I understand there may be concerns about the liability to the district in distributing such monies. Perhaps there are services that can not only handle the processing of a rebate, but also assume some, if not all, of the liabilities associated. If not, perhaps they could pull information provided to the district administration to review, and then they can process the balance of the rebate to the community. If there are such services, we can review proposals to use them. We can then have on the agenda for next month's meeting a resolution to use them and discuss their cost, efficiency, and compliance, along with approval to rebate funds from our surplus back to the community. Again, I would like to make a motion that we postpone the suggested motion 1 until next month's board meeting. I would also like to request that the district administration investigate and request proposals and report back to the board their findings in advance of the next board meeting from possible external services to handle the rebating of money from our district surplus to the community.
So what's the motion?
That we postpone the first motion of approving a rebate to, an abatement rather, an abatement, that we postpone approving an abatement until next month to allow the district and ask the district administration to investigate external services to handle a rebate.
So the short form is you want to table the motion until March 18th.
Yeah, postpone this motion
Yes.
until the March 18th meeting where
Correct.
it'll appear on the agenda again.
Second.
Any discussion about that?
Yeah, just a question. I have a bunch of stuff here, but I'll save the rest of the stuff for March 18th. There is a Budget and Finance Committee meeting on March 4th. That might be a good time to come up with a preliminary plan in advance of the board meeting, because there's going to be a lot of material on March 18th. It's a big decision. Now my question is, and I think Mr. Rosenblum answered it for me, there is a difference between a rebate and an abatement. A rebate does not reset the P-TIL base, where an abatement does. And so the net effect of that is it's a one-time deal, that there's no cumulative loss of the money. And I won't get into the $45 million surplus that District 211 has benefited from over the past 3 years. I'll say that much. I support your motion.
I guess I have a comment in regards to that. I think had we not sold property for the $17 million, we wouldn't be talking about, an abatement or a rebate as you're looking at. And I think one of the things, I looked at a whole variety of things as to why I don't support this. I don't support the abatement. I really don't support a rebate either. Where I work, it's a nonprofit, and we've been helping clients with rent and mortgage assistance because the state has gotten money from the feds, and money keeps kind of trickling down, which is a good thing to help people. One of the things that we always have to check is who is the owner of the property, because it's always vendor pay. So you make the payment to whoever the owner is. We have the W-9 that the landlord has to complete. We also do a property check, and you would be amazed as to how many people are renting their home or their condo, and when you look at the property tax bill, they're taking homeowner exemptions. I guess I have a problem with that, because if you're renting the property, you don't actually live there, and that troubles me. So, had we not been doing this, I probably wouldn't be aware of that. But that's happening.
So just to clarify, you think that the people that are following the laws and using the homeowner exemption correctly should not be entitled to a rebate because of people that are taking advantage of renters? Is that correct?
I think we can approach things differently, of maybe either helping our taxpayers, such as we are waiving some fees for the students, a variety of other things. I just feel very uncomfortable with the knowledge that people are renting their properties and they're also taking homeowner exemptions.
Mrs. Bunkos, we're not here to enforce the law.
I understand that.
Okay.
I'm just speaking. I'm just telling you what I know and why I have a concern with it.
So you think that overrides giving taxpayers back money they deserve because some people are cheap?
Excuse me, I'd like to say that I support the motion, and my reasoning is a little bit different. As I see the situation, we have two pathways to ever returning lessening burden on our property taxpayers, and that's how the majority of our funding comes through. We have abatement, which, the accumulation of everything that we've discussed year after year, the law such as it's written simply doesn't allow us to ever make any other prudent financial decision that includes an abatement simply because of that compounding effect. If I could approve a $3 million abatement that would expire after 5 years,
when we give it back all the proceeds of the land sale, and then after that, we could just, it would stop negatively affecting the bottom line and not just perpetuate into infinity. I would enthusiastically do that, but the law simply doesn't allow it. So that's a really small box that we're stuck in, and I made comments last year about how frustrated I feel at being in this box, and I still feel the same way this year. So if we're saying that that's just not really a possibility, given the kind of attitudes that we collectively as a board for both have shown about fiscal responsibility and the administration, et cetera, the only other pathway available is a rebate, which has, of course, as Mr. Kramer suggested and surmised, the benefit of not being a systemic refund. So you're not essentially shooting a hole in a bucket that just keeps leaking water, year after year after year. At the same time, I actually called Neighborville District 203, because they're doing this, I'm sure you've seen in the news, a $10 million abatement. I wanted to speak to their CFO and how on earth they're pulling it off, and it's a monumental undertaking, and I personally would never feel good about saddling our own financial officers with that kind of undertaking. I don't think it's part of their regular duties, and thus the impetus for exploring an outside service. I think that I'm completely willing to accept the argument that an abatement just isn't prudent for the reasons I've already discussed. I'm willing to accept the argument that rebates for 80,000 property taxpayers it's simply too complicated and the legal risk is too much, and it's not actually possible. But I don't feel like I've been given the information to confidently say that that's the case. And so this is why I feel like I can better make a decision when I have more information, and this is why I support this motion. I need more information to see whether this is even a possibility, if it is a possibility, what that possibility would look like, if it's financially viable for us, if it's even theoretically possible, and then I'm prepared to accept whatever outcome of that decision it happens to be. So I support the motion primarily because I think we owe it to ourselves and the community to have confidence in the options that are presented to us. And I need more information before I feel
I would like to reply to Mr. Kramer, your question or your statement directed at me. In 2015, we had a 0% levy. We did a $2 million abatement. So to say that we've not been doing things is incorrect as a board. I was on that board, I've continued to be on the board, and I've been working at being fiscally responsible. From 2007 to 2016, we've abated $33 million. I think that's really important to keep in mind. So we've done that, we've worked at it. One of the things I'd like to point out in regards to the sale of the property, we did an assessment of our assets. And part of that was, what can we do with the property? And it was the decision that was made to sell the property. We had input from the community. We had input from the teachers. We had a great deal of input. One of the things that came through on that was that when we discussed the sale of the land, that when we received the proceeds, that they should be used for a one-time use, such as technology, maybe additional classrooms, auditorium, things of that nature, things that are going to be used for the students. So we have had input, we have some direction from the community. But I think the most important is we have been working at abatements, and we have been trying to be fiscally responsible to the community.
I believe I heard you say you neither favor an abatement or a rebate. Is that correct?
I don't know enough about the rebate, and maybe we can get some more information there. But the abatement, I do not favor that.
Well, I think you said for a rebate, I don't favor that because people may be cheated.
I didn't use the word cheating. I said...
If this will help, the motion that we're facing is to postpone this or not. For the most part, I've heard everybody say they support that. Do you want to just take the vote on postponing, and we can have this conversation when we're faced with a motion to take action.
Can I add something here?
Yeah.
In terms of doing the rebate, the amount of time that it's going to take to investigate each PIN number is about 30 minutes if the thing is easy, because I've done it. And we're probably talking for 80,000 PINs, 160,000 hours to do this. And I did talk to an agency that were probably willing to do it, or at least willing to give us a proposal on it. But it's going to be very costly. Don't think it's going to be cheap, because there's a lot of man hours put to it. There's also investigations of whether property's in a trust fund. Also, if there's ever been a divorce, all sorts of things like that. Plus, we have to look at the property value dated back to a year ago. It's not today. It'll be, because our tax bills are based on back-based. So, you know, that's this year's tax bill from 2019. So there, I mean, I agree, or I think we should investigate it, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to be surprised at the number.
Okay, are we ready for the question on postpone, everybody? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mrs. Kunkwitz? Aye. Ms. Cabell? Aye. Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. LaFeather?
Aye. Okay, so Dr. Small, you're clear, we're postponing this motion until the March 18, 2021 board meeting, at which time we'll see this again. And I believe Mr. Rosenblum asked for some information, investigation, exploration. Are you clear on what he was asking?
Any questions, Lauren? Do you need any clarifications?
No, I don't, not at this time.
This is just the first motion of the...
Yes, yes. If there's something that comes up between now and the finance committee meeting and a question, maybe you could bring that to the finance committee meeting. I guess I would just encourage everybody if can to then attend that meeting, because it's kind of going to be a robust supplement. And if there's an update to be had, we will get that from Dr. Small.
If I can just share, the meeting, I believe, was March 4th. If that
Budget and Finance Committee.
The Budget and Finance meeting, and I know there were a lot of ideas floated regarding proposals, investigation. Investigative information can be brought on the 4th, but that would not provide time to do any sort of proposal and cost, have a concrete proposal.
Would it be possible,
even services to do that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Would it be possible, could we expect maybe like a generalized ballpark, or would that even be out of the question, do you think?
I really can't tell you. I can tell you that I've spoken with Naperville as well, and I've spoken with our attorneys several times on this matter, and I'm not saying there aren't companies that are out there, but the companies that would bear the liability were not coming to mind that would have the resources to be able to do this as quickly as we would need the turnaround. So that's where I would need some more time to be able to investigate and see what I can do with that. Sure, that would be great.
And they said they could do the whole thing.
Ms. Hummel, did I hear you say that you talked with Naperville?
I have.
And they said it can be done?
They are doing it internally.
Okay.
And just as a point of clarification, there is no March 31st deadline with rebate. It would be independent of our abatement schedule. So there would be no urgency if that was a route that, eventually this board decided to take.
Say it again, there's no March 31st deadline for a rebate, is that what you said?
Correct.
I'll appreciate any information that you can bring, but I understand that just due to the time, they'll be limited. I understand that.
I have a question for clarification. So, Mr. Rosenblum, are you suggesting $3 million for a rebate, or is that what you're looking at, or what are you looking at?
That's a good question. I
I don't know how the service is charged, right? If they charge per pin, then the amount is irrelevant to the investigation of what services there are and how much they would charge us. And then secondarily, if we identify that we want to use a service, and this is how much the service charges, and that is the determination of this board to utilize such a service to provide a rebate, then secondarily we can decide what the amount of that rebate would be, and then have that service handle that for us.
At this point, I think we just need to wait for Dr. Small to bring information back so that we can have a conversation around that, because it's just hypothetical issues. It's not anything other than that.
I have one clarification, and more than we know the answer to this off the top of our head. For I think it's the fiscal responsibility law that we're looking into for this. Is there do you know off the top of your head, is there a timeline, like part of the calendar year when this has to be done?
I do not believe so. I would need to confirm that, but I do not believe so.
Thank you.
I guess I'm still having a difficult time, figuring out how much you're looking at for a rebate.
He isn't.
You're not, okay.
He's just asking for information from Dr. Small, right? So that everybody can have the same information.
So
we can have a discussion.
So the approved motion was to postpone the abatement motion and to ask for an investigation on services.
So it could be 3 million, it could be 2, it could be 5, right?
Yeah, well, I think the services are going to remain the same, regardless of whether it's 3 million, 4 million, 2 million. The services will be the same.
The cost may not be.
No, I'm talking about the cost of the services.
Right.
Because it's just going in and doing the numbers. And finding the names.
Okay, now, if we could address the second motion here, which is that the Board of Education intends for $5 million of proceeds of the land sale to be allocated for capital improvement projects in a future budget year. Would someone like to move that?
Someone.
Second.
Discussion here.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we're just writing a blank check for $5 million at this time. If it sits in reserves and we continue to proceed with our capital planning, maybe it's something where we can be made aware that this is the intent and our budget goes from $10 million a year to $11 million a year. I'm not sure why, we have to, we have a pretty robust capital program right now. To just allocate open-ended another $5 million with no timeline or no specifics doesn't really make too much sense to me.
Yep, I move to table this motion until March 18th. For the reasons that Mr. Dombrowski stated. And, what we need to have is, what do you want to buy for $5 million? We don't know. I think we need that to figure out whether or not we even want to, earmark those funds for something in the future. There's no detail.
Can we call it the postpone until March 18, 2021, so Dr. Small brings it back?
Yeah.
Along with the other one that she will also bring back. So can we make that your suggested motion? Postpone until March 18, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Ms. Cabell.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Nay.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre.
Aye. Okay, that will bring us to lawsuit against Jewel Labs, Inc. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing commencement of vaping litigation against Jewel Labs, Inc. as presented and execute the attorney-client fee contract authorizing the legal services of the France Law Group, APLC, as defense attorneys for the mass tort lawsuit against Jewel Labs, Inc. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I don't have enough information to engage this as we discussed previously. We don't know how many litigants this is open for. We don't know how much dilution of this. We could be participating for, a potential $100 payout, which doesn't seem like a good use of our resources. So without really having a good amount of information, I can't support this motion at this time.
Any other comments, questions?
I support this motion primarily because of I support this motion. I support its intent.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Ms. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klunkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Creamer?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. Okay, that will bring us to item C, life safety. We have elevator modernization work at Palatine High School and James B. Conant High School. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent or designee to execute a contract with ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corporation in the amount of $342,535 for elevator modernization work at Palatine High School and James B. Conant High School, approved by the Illinois State Board of Education on the 2018-2019 Life Safety Survey. Could someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klunkowitz? Aye. Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Creamer?
Aye.
Ms. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. All right, that brings us to potential topics for future discussion. Does anyone have anything to add here? Ms. Gallo?
I do. I would like, in responding to all the students who came to give public comments, I would like to add an agenda item. I am open to timeline, understanding that our March meeting seems like it might be full of more financial information, but perhaps in April, since we have two especially meetings scheduled in April going forward, I think April and May. But in the next, certainly before June, let's say, I would like a presentation. I would like a presentation on, essentially, we'll call it violence prevention, District 211 violence prevention. And the topics I would expect and hope to be covered under such a presentation would include, especially in light of the fact that we've recently updated our Title IX policies. I would like an overview of our Title IX policy. I would, in conjunction with that, like an overview of the grievance procedure for a person who wishes to make a claim or a report for Title IX, what that procedure looks like at District 211, including who the reporting officers are, because that's one of the things that recently changed. I would also hope to see an overview of our wellness curriculum, which I believe, from memory, we spoke about in 2019, because I know that that's been recently updated. So I would like an overview on our wellness curriculum, with particular care toward what happens in our sexual education curriculum, knowing that it is integrated now, and that was part of the update. But that's generally, those are some of the topics I would like to see included in such a presentation, and I would like that presentation to happen at some point before June.
I support that. I think there is some urgency to it. I would be amenable. As a matter of fact, I urge a single issue special board meeting just to address this topic. It is that crucial. I'm very disturbed that there's even, that this has not come to the board since I've been on. So I believe that the young ladies who spoke today were sincere and honest, and we got a problem. I think, okay? It seems like we got a problem, but we don't know if we have a problem without really analyzing it, seeing where we're at. So I would recommend a special board meeting in May, if that's enough time. I know, and then The meeting, I think, should also include statistics of numbers of reports and a summary, or, this was the report and this was the action taken. Okay? Do we keep statistics on that, or do we got to keep records of this?
So just to add to the discussion, if the board approves to honor Ms. Cavill's request, I would also like to have within the presentation of topics mechanisms for students to access those resources as far as their Title I coordinator. Is that something they can readily find on their iPad? It sounds like our students were doing a lot of investigation to find that out. I would imagine that we have some sort of button on our iPad that you could just press if you needed to report an incident of some sort. And then the other item would be, how do our school resource officers play into some of these things? Because I think, we do have our teachers who are definitely mandated reporters, but we also have our school resource officers within the building that can address harassment and other issues. And how are we utilizing them as a conduit towards protecting our students?
I agree with all three of our speakers here. A couple of things that I guess I would add to it, if we can get a little more definition of what the curriculum is, how it would be progressing throughout the 4 years. Also taking a look at, the content of that curriculum for our health curriculum, and looking at Aaron's Law. I'm hoping that that's part of some of the discussion, and maybe bringing more awareness in regards to that. And a couple of things that I thought were really important. One of the young ladies talked about having 13-year-olds with 18-year-olds in the same hallways. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind, how kids are different and how they mature and how they learn boundaries and being able to say no. So I thought that one was very important. One of the young ladies, and if I understood correctly, was asking about a student district-wide council. And I'm thinking that that might be a good thing to take a look at, because each school is so different, and maybe we can have representatives from each of the schools to get a better understanding of what's going on and how they can, relate to one another. So I think all of our young people who spoke tonight, they did an amazing job of being able to come forward and talk about this, because this is a really difficult topic. And there's a lot that I wasn't aware of either. I know Mr. Kramer brought that up. So I think that that's important. And as a board, I believe we're receptive and open, and I appreciate our young people bringing that forward. So those are a couple of things I'd like to consider.
So I agree with my 4 colleagues who have spoken so far, but I'd like to add that I think the sooner the better. We've had board meetings go past midnight in the past, and to say, gosh, the March one looks pretty busy, I don't know if we should have this on the agenda, let's wait until maybe there's a less busy meeting for us to start talking about this. I would like to propose that, albeit a busy meeting, that if we have data and information that could be brought to us in the March meeting, that we have it as an agenda item. I would rather not. This is like everybody has said, this is a very important subject, and we need to take action now and not wait. So if it's talked about at the March meeting, talked about at one or both of the April meetings, talked about at the May meeting, right? And maybe we just have it as kind of a standing item for X amount of time, maybe like 3 meetings. I'm not saying forever, but maybe like 3 meetings where we can get our arms wrapped around this and do what we can to take care of it, nip it in the bud, so to speak. I think this is an extremely important item, and I think the sooner the better. I'd like to see it on the March agenda, and I have no problem with staying late if that's what it takes for us to be able to get some more information and be able to take care of it. So that's one thing. I also thought the idea of having a district-wide student council was a very good idea, having representation from each of our schools to bring things up to the district level. I know we have different personalities, but we also have it for a district, right? And we represent all of the students in all of the schools, and to have that representation I think would be very helpful. I'd also like more information on sexual harassment training and required, I forgot what the word is for teachers to be required, mandated reporters. I'd like some more information about what that looks like for our teachers, incoming teachers, existing teachers, ongoing training for them. One of the things, mentioning the 13 and 18-year-olds in the hallways together, I'd like to know how quickly our incoming freshmen are exposed to this type of information so that they know what to do very quickly, either during open houses or maybe even before they get to us, some exposure so that when they are, that they're right away prepared and have some level of comfort as to what do I do if, right? And recognizing those situations that are uncomfortable for them and how to respond to those. So incoming freshman information was something that I thought also was important.
Maybe we can give Dr. Small the opportunity to put something together appropriately with an appropriate level of quality. And in the meantime, if people have additional feedback to provide her with, I'm sure she would be receptive to having that as she works to put together something.
But before we vote on this motion to add it to a board agenda item as new business, maybe there's enough going on currently with our student body that it might be worth establishing a committee to deal with a lot of what needs to be addressed. Some of the content that was discussed here might not necessarily be something that we want recorded and put on Facebook, or I'm sorry, not Facebook, but YouTube. For some of these sensitive topics. I mean, they can be emotional, and it's the potential that a committee to really delve into some of these experiences at an individual level may be a more appropriate setting where we could have a student council in that committee. It could be open, but it doesn't necessarily have to be recorded board business. And I'd be open to having a separate student wellness committee that would be under the board's jurisdiction, similar to our Budget and Finance Committee, which would be open to all members, but wouldn't necessarily be something that we'd have to get into the weeds within for board business.
Dr. Small, do you want to, in general, respond to some of this?
I think the board's done a very good job of listening to what our students have said today. I think there were two components, victim support and feeling safe and enthusiastic to that list. I also feel that they were very strong in their voice of saying, we want to partner with you, but we want you to listen to us. And I think that is one step that needs to be taken very quickly and can be taken very quickly to make sure that our perspective or perception of the issue at hand is very clear and understanding compared to what they are experiencing. And I think that is what drives how we move forward. Is that voice that we hear. So I'm not going to give a recommendation until I hear that voice.
I don't disagree with the urgency. It's because of that urgency that I want to be thoughtful and take our time. This was as to my comments about being a full meeting. You see that most of the young people who were kind enough to give us their time tonight, they can't be at a board meeting until 11 o'clock at night. And I want them to have the opportunity to be here while we are at least going through a presentation. And so on top of that, I want to make sure that the administration has ample time to put together what I expect and what it sounds like all of us expect to be a very, very thorough overview of our position on Title. We're not just asking about Title IX, we're asking about Title IX and grievance procedures and the wellness curriculum. And I don't want to do this by half measures. So it's not an indication that I don't appreciate the urgency. It's not this has been my life's work. It is my commitment to making sure that if we are going to do this, then I expect us to do it very, very well, and that's going to require time and consideration and thoughtfulness in the way we go forward.
I don't know, I kind of agree with actually everybody else, Mr. Rosenblum, that we need to do something at the next board meeting. And these ladies were very courageous, very brave, and I think we do a disservice if we don't at least have something for the next board meeting and build upon that, like Mr. Rosenblum has said. Also, with Mr. Dombrowski's comment about the resource officers, I think you should also add the student advisors to that list, because a lot of times there's a good relationship between the students and the student advisors.
And can I ask this then? If we're going to, because I had originally asked for a presentation, which I thought would be more useful than an agenda item unless those are combined, because I was hoping for an overview on our position that we're doing now so we can illustrate what we're going to do better. If we have two presentations, as I'm assuming in March we might, because of the financial discussion we had earlier, can we please make sure that this discussion comes before, that this presentation is first, as opposed to, that's my primary concern. I want this to be as early in the board meeting as possible so that the young people can be here to at least watch, and that includes online. I think that that's really important. And then if we're able to do that, that alleviates my concern. It's not be here till 1 o'clock like everybody else if that's what needs to be. I just want to make sure that we do this, make this as accessible as possible to the young people who are asking for our action, if that makes sense.
And to the point of having a separate committee meeting, it could be such that there is a dialogue at the committee meeting versus here at the board meeting, and that's a mechanism where if we kind of change the format, we could have a committee meeting prior to the 18th, but we would be able to get the feedback on some of the ideas, because like Dr. Small says, to make a recommendation, you have to really have an opportunity to listen. In order to be able to be an active listener, you have to have that dialogue. Otherwise, it's just one-way communication. And I think this topic where we're trying to incorporate the students needs a format and a forum outside of the board where we're just listeners and we're reactionary. We're not able to be active listeners. And that's kind of why I think we can do that in a better way there. And then we can bring to the board everything out of that committee that is a successful recommendation with input from the students, and then have that presentation for action. I think that would make more sense and be a better way of engagement.
I like Mr. Dombrowski's suggestion, but I'm thinking of reversing it. If we have our presentation, then the board has a little bit more knowledge of what is presented as far as the curriculum, what's happening in the school, a little bit more about mandated, and then have that committee discussion, because then I think we'll have a better basis of what's actually going on in the school, or at least the perspective from the staff and the administration, and then maybe getting the feedback from the students.
And I don't disagree with that from my perspective, but if I'm empathizing with a student and that was the approach that our response was, how would you perceive that?
I think we have to learn a little bit more and then have that conversation. We're going to have a little bit more knowledge and we'll be able to discuss it a little bit better and just have that better basis. I think both are necessary. I think you're absolutely correct in regards to that.
We've given Dr. Small an awful lot of information. Can we give her a little room now to operate and either ask for more clarification tonight or come back to us when you're ready with what you plan to give us?
Absolutely, and it will include something on March 18th.
Everyone okay with that then? Okay, thank you. Any other topics? Okay, that will bring us to committee reports. First up, we have Northwest Suburban Special Education Organization.
All right, I will try to be brief. At our board meeting for NSSEO, we talked about the re-engagement plan of having the students back at at the school. It was February 3rd. They were having students back at the school. They talked about priorities to address the re-engagement. Looking at solutions to the challenges that they're facing. More blended learning platform opportunities, expanding the social emotional learning, looking at transportation considerations, and a variety of other things to get the students completely engaged in school. They also talked about the finance committee. So the advisory committee is looking at the projected enrollment. Again, they're looking at the staffing projections, continuous improvement plans, looking at student outcomes and things of that nature, professional learning updates. They're also looking at the rates, the rent increases, based on the Chicago CPI. Also looking at the reserves that they have, and future finances. They've got a couple more meetings that'll be in March, and then it gets presented to the NSSEO board on April 7th, and then we bring it back to our board. So the committee is working on that. Dr. Hackett also gave us an update on the federal level and at the state level, making certain that special education is in the forefront, and what the costs are involved, and how better to support special education, and especially with the finances. So that is about it then.
Thank you. Next we have EdRed.
I did listen in on the virtual summit that was held January 22nd. They had a couple of the state representatives and senators. It was quick. It was just really too short for anyone to get into any kind of meaty discussions. In some cases, they're looking to the feds for helping Illinois with some of the expenses, the costs. Looking at transportation costs, Senator Ann Gillespie talked about a bill for social workers to help the social workers that are going to be working at the schools, to help them as far as some of the costs involved with education. They talked about economic development. They talked about mandates a little bit. Someone had asked the question about mandates, what's on and the cost, and what can be dropped and what could be coming forward. So asking them to take a look at some of the mandates that they're providing to schools. They talked a little bit about TIFs. Senator Gillespie, she talked about that a little bit, of limiting it to 10 years instead of the 20 plus years, getting a better definition of blighted areas, looking at transparency, review surpluses when it occurs. Also, encouraging students to return to schools. And that was most of it. It was hard for that short period of time. I know that Mr. Rosenblum was on and Mr. Kramer was on, so maybe they have something more to add.
But the executive director did just recently resign. She's taken another job. I talked to her at like that.
Right, so a couple things. The executive director did resign, and they're looking for a new one, so if there's anybody interested. They're also looking for board members to serve on the executive board, so if there's anyone that might be interested. Thank you very much, Mrs. Lipkowitz, for the update on a lot of the subject matter that was included. I attended several of the sessions, including the roundtables with our local representatives and local senators. It was nice to be able to pick and choose which ones I was interested in hearing from, not so much downstate as up in our own area. I also attended the keynote address, and they had a session on advocacy training. And I found that to be very informative as well on how to be an advocate for local legislation that supports our school districts. So it was nice to hear from them. But to your point, it was so fast. And in some of the sessions, they had 2 or 3 senators or representatives. And to give each of them an opportunity to say something in the very short period of time that they had was very constraining. I could tell on them as well as the people who wanted to know more information. But it was a very good day.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Our meeting was on February 4th. The material is substantially similar to tonight's presentation on the long-term financial planning. Anything to add, Mr. Dombrowski?
No, it kind of mirrored exactly what we did during the committee meeting.
The material is always available online in Board Docs if anyone wants to see that. Okay, that will bring us to Partners for Our Community, evening community services.
I'm happy to give an update, Mr. Volkov.
Thank you.
The group met most recently on January 25th. You might recall that when the pandemic began, services were suspended. I'm happy to report that in mid-January, we've resumed services 2 nights a week, and through partnerships with member agencies, we are distributing gift cards, clothing, food, and other everyday living supplies to families. We also are scheduling appointments for families that need advice and support regarding immigration services. And so it's good to see those things picking back up. The team will meet again this coming Monday for next session.
Thank you. All right, next we have our announcements. And if there are no questions there, I don't think we have anything further for closed session, so we just have our suggested motions. First suggested motion is that the Board of Education accepts the retirement request of Beverly Bain effective December 2021 according to the master contract of the District 211 United Support Staff. Can someone please move that?
So
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. We have a suggested motion that effective July 1, 2021, Mark Langer be appointed as principal at William Friend High School at a gross salary of $169,000. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. We have a suggested motion that effective July 1, 2021, Louis Arroyo be appointed as athletic director at Palatine High School at a gross salary of $152,000.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. We have a suggested motion that effective July 1, 2021, Michelle Napier be appointed as Director of College and Career Readiness for Township High School District 211 at a gross salary of $147,000. Can someone please read?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. LaFever?
Aye. We have a suggested motion that effective July 1, 2021, Danielle Hauser be appointed as Director of Student Services for Township High School District 211 at a gross salary of $176,500.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz. Aye. Ms. Cavill. Aye. Mr. LaFever.
Aye. If there's nothing further,
Just one thing, we had no discussion on the administrative appointments, and I know that Mr. Rosenblum had some questions that I don't know if he was provided the opportunity to address here in open session.
sure, please.
I was, thank you very much. I was asking regarding salary designation for people into new positions and how that was determined, and if there was a rubric or, how that was calculated, considering, and I did receive further clarification to my questions around their tenure with the school district, their current position, what their current salary is, and the range associated to the position, and designating what their offer is for the role. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the follow-up. I also want to make a comment and just encourage everybody who's on Zoom or here in our auditorium that there are some fundraisers that schools are asking the community to participate in for different reasons, for different organizations, be they student organizations, parent organizations, and so forth, from Dine to Donate to Trivia Nights to other recognizing fundraisers that are supporting our programs. And I'd like to encourage everyone to take advantage of those as much as possible to help during this time.
If there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.